This episode of the podcast is brought to you by HRH Combat Arms. They can turn your vision into reality. They specialize in gunsmithing and Cerakoting. Your Cerakote specialist is Air Force veteran and retired police sergeant Paul Ware, aka the Sarge. He can Cerakote your firearms, auto parts, tools, even your sports equipment. And then your master gunsmith is Marine veteran Steve Miller. This veteran-owned business is located at 5025 Saunders Suite 103, Fort Worth, Texas 76119. You can call them at 682-304-0363, and you can find them online at www.hrhcombatarms.com. That's www.hrhcombatarms.com. All right, back again. Two Cops, One Donut. I'm your host, Eric Levine. Today, my guest is Professor Dr. Johnny Nhan. Is that correct, sir?
Yes.
Doctor, right? Not like...
You don't have to call me doctor.
Not like cut my balls, make me cough, doctor.
Yeah, not that.
Not that type?
Not that type.
Oh, okay. All right. You are one of my former professors. Man, my table's a little dirty here. Johnny is... me and Johnny met in about 2015, 2016, somewhere in there. I was shopping around looking for a place to do my master's degree. I was almost committed to Michigan State, even though it goes against everything in my body, because they had a really good criminal justice program.
They do.
And they had a whole bunch of options. Like you could be Homeland Security, you can be cybersecurity, all these different avenues you could take. And I was like, you know what? I'll bite the bullet for this one, and I'll do that because it's online. And they would use the GI Bill, which is what I needed to do. And I didn't know that TCU had a GI Bill. I thought because it was a private school, there's no way they would take the GI Bill. And then you guys had sent a citywide email to us where I work. And I saw that, and I was like, if I can stay local, I'll try to stay in the area. So reached out. You think you got a hold of me right away. And you're like, come on out. I'll take you to dinner. I'll show you around. I was like...
Yeah, I remember the first time we met, I was over in the Sundance Square. And I was like, hey, there's this applicant, Eric Levine. And I had asked around, just some of the bike cops in the area. And they're like, yeah, we know that guy. He's working right now. So lo and behold,
that's right.
You show up, like 5 minutes later on your bike. And I'm like, hey, and
that's
we
right.
kind of hit it off from there. So
yeah. It's
been exciting to see what you've, I mean, I remember you talking about this podcast or something similar to it for years.
Yeah.
And, wanting to do your master's. So it's kind of nice to see that progression of you.
This was the thesis idea.
Yeah.
It was an unknown idea. Like I didn't quite realize where I was going with it. And then when we did all the thesis work that I never completed, I did all the work.
You did finish your master's degree. So
I finished the work. I just didn't do the writing portion of it. But everything in the research showed like people wanted to have social media as a tool for law enforcement. But how do you do it?
Right.
And that was the answer that I couldn't quite figure out at the time. And I was trying to... I guess I was thinking a little too limited at the time. I was like, well, it's probably Facebook. Like that's like, it can't just be all these different apps. It's got to be Facebook. Like that's how I initially was thinking.
Right.
And then I had been listening to the Rogan podcast forever. And then he had made some points about the negative side of social media. And then he had made some good points about the positive stuff. And I'm like, it's like it's right there. I just can't quite see it. And then it finally clicked.
Yeah. And this is so cool too, because the technology caught up really in those years. I mean, in 2015, you probably wouldn't have been able to do it this way.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But even like the mixer here, that
like
just
all the
came
technology,
out.
And everyone being on the internet and being used to streaming and everything. So that's really exploded in the last,
in 2012, 2015, this would have been $100,000 project.
Yeah.
You know
now
what I mean?
You're like, let me go on Amazon and just get all the stuff with all these streamers and everything. So those are the real trailblazers but this is important work that you're doing. I remember you wanting to put the perspective out that is often unheard or unseen, which is from the officer's point of view. And it's not that broad stroke of officers. We'll probably talk about it today, the different types of officers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it's important. You know, it's a topic that I've been doing for a while, which is, you know, police research and stuff like that. So it's near and dear to my heart, and I'm glad that you have this forum to do it.
I appreciate it.
Ballsy enough to do,
right?
Ballsy enough to put yourself out there.
Yeah.
You know,
I think it was needed, and I think it's like I said, it's a chance for our side of the house. I don't like drawing lines, but from this profession to give a perspective on all, not just aspects of law enforcement, but aspects of academia, aspects of prosecutors, attorneys, district attorneys, judges, nurses, all facets of the frontline workers. So we get them on there, and I can give my perspective based on working with what they've done in my life, you know. So I had a defense attorney on here, and I'm like, I brought the enemy on, you know. And it's playful because I've never not gotten along with the defense attorney who's given me the time of day. But there's that aspect of, well, I'm here trying to put bad guys in jail, and you're trying to skirt the system to get somebody you know is guilty, but you're trying to get them the least amount of time you can get.
You know, each person has their role. You know what I mean? You just have to respect that.
Yeah.
And not take anything personal.
Yeah. And I think I've always done really well, especially if I don't get too invested in the case as a patrol officer. Yeah. You know, you handle a domestic, you know, the guy that you just arrested is a piece of shit. He just beat the crap out of his kid and his wife. And I do the case to the best of my ability up until it gets passed off to a detective, and I wash my hands of it. Yeah. I don't look at it again unless a detective or the district attorney is like, hey, we got to go to trial. I need you to check up on this case. And you're like, oh, okay.
And which is interesting because you probably should not have done this podcast early in your career. You know what I mean? Like,
right, yeah.
Like you have such a different perspective with now with your education, having your undergraduate, your master's degree, having all that patrol experience and detective experience and working in the CJ system.
Oh, for sure.
You know, so it wouldn't have been right. I mean, what you don't want to do is early in your career, just give that 100% cop perspective. Yeah. And I say that respectfully. I mean, but you're different now.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Because if I would have been on here year 2 or 3, it would have been like everybody goes to jail.
Exactly.
You know, it does. It takes time to hit that stride. Some don't.
Yeah.
Some just, and it's not that it's bad. They figured out what works for them. That's what's kind of fun about law enforcement. You figure out what works for you and that you can put your head down on the pillow at night with. And that may be completely different than how I do it.
Well, you're a little bit different. I mean, not just from your education, but really the ambition that you have. You know what I mean? Getting your master's degree, that's something that a lot of cops don't do.
Right.
You know what I mean? But it's like, hey, you're always trying to think, hey, what's the next thing? What's the next thing?
Yeah. Well, I don't like being idle.
Yeah. So I like that. I appreciate that. I'm kind of the same way too. So.
Yeah. If it's like, now that I'm doing this is eating up like my hobby time. Yeah. So I haven't been to the gym in like 5 months. I'm dying over here. I can feel it too. Getting dad bod again. So I need to get in the gym. But all right, enough about me, sir. Let's. You're the guest. Let's talk about you. So, give a little background how you got to where you're at as far as your college career.
Yeah. So I went to school, my undergraduate degree out in California.
Hippie.
Yeah, I get that a lot here in Texas, but whatever, you know, take your shots.
It's nice. You cut your hair. You stop smoking dope. That's all good.
You know what I mean? But I went out there to University of California, Irvine, which was one of the top schools in criminology. I continued on after my undergraduate, so I ended up getting my PhD there. And then afterwards, you know, I worked at a jail for a little bit. That was part of my internship, and I worked part-time, and that was not something that I was interested in doing. And that was in between graduating as undergrad and before graduate school. So I had a tiny little taste of like the criminal justice system, and I was a criminology major. I was an economics major. But then when I went to get my PhD, that's when I really started to research stuff on policing, and I was doing stuff on policing cybercrime and cyberspace and stuff like that. So I had to meet with a lot of different officers and investigators, both federal and local and county. And they have a task force over there. So they were doing a lot of cybercrime stuff. And I got kind of involved in that. And I was like, hey, this is really cool. I like the convergence of academics with practical practitioner stuff. So I gathered that data and then got my degree. Then I went out to the different parts of the country to interview. Weirdly, I guess coincidentally, Michigan State was one of the places I was considering working at, and they are a top 10, school of criminology.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
a real huge powerhouse when it comes to research, especially in policing. They were one of the forefronts of community policing. So Robert, I'm going to destroy his last name, but Trojanowicz, over there, one of the founders of community policing. So highly considered that school, but then ultimately went to TCU just because I really liked my visit. The interview went really well. I like the people there, and I think I made the right choice.
Yeah, no,
and I like it. And now it's kind of grown. We have our own master's program, which is a top 10 program right now. And got to meet people like you, people in your department, people around the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and such cool officers.
And people all the way over from LAPD to you're across the nation now.
Yeah, so and I haven't when I was working in a jail, it was part of a jail that was part of a police department, so I got to meet a lot of the officers there, and it's such a huge variety of officers. But the ones that I met here in the DFW area have all been really like-minded in that they're open-minded. So I've met a lot of very leadership-oriented officers. Yeah, ones that really want to push policing to a higher level. Yeah. So I've been working with them, working with your department, and trying to develop that convergence between education, getting officers educated in that way. Not that there's anything wrong, but hey, if you want to take it to that next level, really, education is one of the components of that.
Right. I've probably told you this. I tell people, I've said it on this podcast a million times. In my experience, 17 years of law enforcement, I've fulfilled my educational needs above and beyond, and I don't think education makes a better cop. Mm-hmm. It gives you perspective and it offers opportunity within your department. So, what I mean by that, for those like, what do you mean opportunity? Well, if me and Johnny both go after the same position and Johnny doesn't have college, but I do, that's going to be the winning factor within the department. Right. Especially if you start trying to take high positions in other agencies. They're going to be looking for that stuff. And the old adamant used to be, well, it's a CJ degree. You might as well have basket weaving. Well, it is a highly sought after thing now because you can't just have the PC friendly guy anymore. You got to actually have some knowledge behind how to stop crime trends, how to do all that stuff. And the only degree that's going to really start teaching this is something in criminology and criminal justice. Right. So, you could be a stats major and do something like that. It may help you a little bit, but I don't think it's going to give you the avenues you're looking for.
And the discipline has really moved forward a lot. It used to be CJ used to be one of those that were not very well respected within a university. So you'll have a lot of the more traditional universities just kind of poo-pooing on it and saying like, hey, you know what, that's really part of sociology. And decades ago when that split happened, CJ separated from sociology and they took all the cool stuff with them. Yeah. All the murders and deviants and the policing and stuff like that. And over the decades, we've moved away. Now, when they separated, it was just really a bunch of old crusty cops, you know what I mean? Telling war stories, right? Kind of like a police academy plus, but that's really moved beyond that to where you have true academics now with really advanced statistics and data. And it's very data driven and with our own methodologies, own theories. So it's really established itself as something, really legitimate. Yeah. So it's not, again, a bunch of just crusty old cops telling war stories and stuff from the old days.
I'll get into going and teaching, guest instructing and stuff like that in a little bit. But one of the things I want to get out there is you focus on policing side, obviously. So one of the things I told you that I can't stand and couldn't stand, like going from my undergrad and all that, is I've got instructors up here. I knew I was going to be cop or FBI or something to that effect. And I got these guys up here telling me about a job that they've never done ever. So that was discouraging. I did have a couple, and the instructors I liked the best were the ones that had some practical application. Like constitutional law. I had a former prosecutor that was in there teaching it. And I mean, the dude's passion for it was great. So I learned a lot in that class, and I didn't intend to even like it. You is starting out. What does academia look? Do they recognize that? Is it something that's well known?
Yeah. So there's a culture in academia, which is research is first. So you make a name for yourself by publishing journal articles, and the higher the journal, the better. Books. I mean, that's how you put yourself out there. So everything else becomes kind of secondary. So when you have somebody who's like a former police officer become a professor and get their PhD, it could work against you. You see, hey, this guy is too cop oriented. He's always going to sing the praises of policing or something. We want somebody more objective to, kind of in a weird way, tell it the way it is based on just the research data.
Right.
Right. So, most people will see that as, hey, oh, he's a former cop. I mean, there's some very famous former police officer criminologists out there, but for the most part, it's like, hey, you don't want somebody who is cop first and academic second.
Yeah.
So hopefully that makes sense. But the way that you kind of cut your teeth in academia is just, hey, research, especially if you want to go into like one of the, I would say top 100 universities like TCU. I mean, it's always like an emphasis on research.
Okay.
So we don't really necessarily go after the guy who's like, oh, he's got like 15 years or 20 years of police experience, got his PhD. And the problem with a lot of officers, and this is not really a problem, but it's only an issue if you want to break into like the top 100 or top 50 universities, is sometimes they'll get their PhD and it'll be like, from a program that's not well known, right? Or an online PhD. And then when departments from these top 100 universities see this, or top 50 universities, they're like, oh, well, that's not good enough, because we want somebody from, for example, from the world of criminology, we want somebody from University of Maryland or Cincinnati or an Irvine or some, Michigan State. So we want those type of PhDs. So when other academics look at it and be like, whoa, that's a powerhouse program. Look at their pedigree.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay.
So it's kind of like that. So having a police background doesn't necessarily put you into that. Now, there's a unicorn, which a friend of mine, Rick Helfers, was a officer and a retired captain, and then now he's over at UT Tyler, and he's like a full-on legitimate researcher, and we call him a unicorn because it's so rare.
Yeah. I think a lot of times with that, it's your work's going to speak for itself.
Right.
Now, you may have to grind, but greatness is going to recognize greatness.
Right.
So if you're putting out high quality research and work like that, somebody's going to take notice.
Yeah. And, historically too, law enforcement and academics have not meshed well. There's always been a mistrust.
Yeah.
Because, law enforcement traditionally have caused a lot of issues that have led to social problems, and academics have been loving to expose that stuff and, talk about how awful it is, or the culture of policing. A lot of it's true because they're getting the data from that. So there's a mistrust there. So that's something that
I've always looked at it the opposite way. Nobody's going to give credibility to the great work we do more than a researching college.
Right. Because
who's going to put that work out there? It ain't going to be the citizens. They're not going to do that.
Right.
And if it is, it's not going to be trusted. If cops put out their own research, again, not going to be trusted, because you're putting your own stuff out there. But this supposed to be unbiased third party comes in that has credibility as being a research facility, can come in and say, oh, well, look at this department and the way they do community policing. Look at the citizen support they have here. Why do they stand out? What are they doing different? And then that's where the research can come in. And if you have a relationship with your college, which I think my department where I'm at has a great relationship with ours, but you have to have that out there up front, like good, bad, and different. Like you can't get hurt feelings because you don't like what we came up with.
It depends on the leadership too.
Yeah.
So if the leadership, it has a educational background, they'll know like, hey, this is not they're not a threat to us.
Right.
Yeah. We're on the same page here. We're on the same team. So we're looking for. And
research is never final. That's the other thing I try to tell people. It's never final. Like, okay, here's our research. This is what we found. You go through it as the department. Right. You got some holes here. You guys didn't account for this and that. And that's why these numbers are, okay.
Yeah.
Adjustment.
So the best people that I know, and I think this is kind of a warning sign to be self-reflective too, is if you think, and you know this, if you think you know it all, then that person is not the one that should be in charge of anything.
Right.
As academics, and we're guilty of that too. You'll have some professors who are like, hey, I'm the expert in this, but I know so much that I know that I don't know much. Right. You know what I mean? I'm just scratching the surface. Yeah. And stuff that I've done in the last few months have really exposed that. You know what I mean? Like I don't know as much as I thought I did. And when I find out new things, I'm on to that new thing first. As long as you prove it to me, in a very sound way. But I'm on that. And then we'll explore that until that becomes. So that's really the basis of the scientific method. Yeah. If you think about it, it's just a process. I mean, academics and academic research is just a continual process. There's no end to it.
And the cool part that I like about criminal justice and criminology, and it changes with the weather. It's what's acceptable and what works one generation, it doesn't work the next. Yeah. And I kind of see a shift of going back to some old school police work mixed in with the new.
It's fun to talk about the evolution of police and where we're going and where we've been. Yeah. Because it's amazing. There's so many. Police work at its base level is so primitive. Mm-hmm. You don't let people steal. You don't let people kill. Right. You don't let them rape. and that's about the basics. And you go talk to people. So if you can keep police work in that mindset, well, it doesn't change a whole lot. But there's so many, like it's, now there's body cameras, now there's computers, there's drones, and now there's all these different methods. There's the dark web, there's the darker web, there's all these different webs that you got to worry about. And everything is so international now too. And really, if you look at it, that evolution of police means the evolution of the officer. Yeah. The types of people that you want to become police officers are evolving as well. You know what I mean? They're going to have to be able to adapt to all those things and thrive in that environment where things change all the time. You just have to adapt to it. Yeah. It's interesting to see just the new stuff bad guys come up with. It's like, I find all this history of dealing, like, there's no money exchanged ever. It's all off apps, cash apps. Yeah, I mean, think about like prostitution. I mean, who's standing on the corner these days? Right. You know what I mean? Who knew stealing catalytic converters were going to be a huge thing? God. And it's a huge thing now. Right. So annoying. Yeah. So annoying. So who knows? But with you, you got into, there's a whole bunch of different aspects of criminal justice and criminology and all that. Why did you choose policing? And when you did that, did you do it because you wanted to fix it? You did it because the stories interested you? Like, why did you pick policing versus all the other stuff that's available? Yeah, I mean, just to give you context, there's a ton of stuff available to study in the CJ system and criminology. Some people study, for example, theories on why people commit crime. There's corrections research. Just kind of like deviance research. There's anything from like studying legal aspects to death penalty. I mean, there's just a ton. But policing for me has always been something that I've been kind of interested in. Every kid growing up is like, there's the police. So there's you always have some sort of reaction to it. Nobody sees a police car drive by or a policeman and see the uniform and like not have zero effect, like, oh, it's just another guy in the crowd type of deal, you know? So it's always, you know, and we know this because police shows have always been popular. It's always, you know,
since black and white.
Yeah. The movies, like the protagonist is usually like a cop, or, you know what I mean? Like it's always something that, you know, has always interested me. And when I started taking some classes on policing, I'm like, hey, this is kind of really interesting. Yeah. There's so many aspects and why police officers do the things that they do, you know, and then you kind of realize, hey, they're humans. They make mistakes. They do things that are sometimes unethical, sometimes really great, but there's a story always behind it. Yeah. You know? And I try, like, you'll see. But if you haven't seen already, there's that hive mind, you know, that happens. And if somebody mentions that a cop did something bad, you know, like the corruption that happened in the 70s in New York, the corruption that happened in New Orleans, I think it was the 90s, maybe even 2000. I don't know. I can't quite remember. It's when the officers were involved with the drug dealers and all that stuff. I mean, there's some cops that are legitimate gang members. Yeah. I mean, one book that I assigned was this book called Labyrinth, and it's about the Biggie Tupac. So I assigned that to my class. Yeah. And, you know, LAPD gang members were police officers. I mean, they're one of the same. Yeah. And they do the security details and stuff like that, but they're really gang members. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And, you know, highly protected. So, but it does happen, and it's important to call that stuff out. I don't think it should be your talking point. I just, you know, hey, we need to make sure we're keeping these checks and balances, because if we don't, this is what can happen. Right. But the research side of me is like, but why did it happen? Exactly. What was the causes that made that happen? Exactly. Oh, they weren't being paid. Oh, they weren't being backed by the citizens. Oh, there's, you know, corruption. Well, part of it is the thrill. You know what I mean? The thrill of it. Yeah. So. What was the hiring standards at the time? That's, you know, I mean, there's so many different factors that can go into something like that. And I'm not saying I know the answer. I'm just saying when I look at it, that's how I look at it. I'm like, well, but why? Yeah. Like, and there's a combo of things. Usually. Yeah. It ain't just going to be, people don't sign up to be a cop just to go be a criminal. At least I don't think they do. Right. Maybe there's some outliers, but not to that extent in one department. So what caused all that? So that's what I like about the policing research stuff. Yeah. Like, and it's always evolving too. There's always new stuff. Yeah. You know what I mean? For a while, body cams were a new thing. Before that, it was dash cams. Yep. And then moving forward, I mean, there's like so many other aspects of policing that we might get into today. But I know Axon body camera, which is the brand most officers use. They have I don't know if it's out yet, but I know they have a drone that attaches to the light bar or to the top of the vehicle. It's like magnetic and it's locked down. And when you conduct a traffic stop and activate your body cam, that thing deploys and it gives an aerial view of the traffic stop. Hey man, that's amazing. And really, you know, I would love to watch a movie where that happened. You know what I mean? I mean, think about it. That's the silent witness of your possible murder. Yeah. And then if that car takes off, it just can go up in the air and follow and give you that window of time you need, because it can tell you which direction it's going. That is like the future of policing right there. Yeah. Man. Yeah. It's really cool. Exactly. Also, I want to talk. Okay. So you got into the police side was what interested you. Right. And when you started getting into it, what avenues were you looking at? Like, were you looking at improving anything? Was there, what were you looking at? I didn't have a real practical sense in the very beginning. You know, the thing with being a faculty member is it's publish or perish. So I'm just looking at, hey, that's a source of data, looking at different angles that I could publish in. Like I said in the beginning, I was looking at really the policing of cyberspace. And, you know, my question was, who does it? How's it done? What are some of the difficulties? You know, what are the legal issues of jurisdiction? I mean, all those different aspects of it. And really that became my dissertation. And then afterwards, you know, I began to make some connections to local police departments and stuff. So I started researching just different areas of policing, having to do with technology, having to do with like stuff on like the police culture, police in the media. There are just so many issues. And as we launched our graduate program, I became more, closer with police, with police officers like you know what I mean? Where we're just like, hey, we're working on this thing. Hey, come hang out with me for a while. So I got a little taste of that, of the inner circle. You know what I mean? I wouldn't be like an outsider anymore. I wouldn't be like an insider, but I wouldn't be like, hey man, what's that guy doing here? You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's like, have people like you to kind of be like, oh, he's cool. He's not like out to screw us over or report on us or anything like that. Not to say that doesn't go on in academia. One funny story is even today, after all the, I've been doing some stuff in policing as well. Maybe we'll get into that later. But I was invited to, as a guest for a regional / national, like future of policing conference for just officers.
Yeah.
So I got invited to that, and I was the guest of of one of the hosts. And he's like, hey, every department or every agency brings, or more on the federal side, but hey, you could bring a guest, you plus somebody else. So this organization was like, hey, you and somebody else who's an officer be our guest. So I'm like, oh yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And then I get a call the next day and be like, hey, sorry, man, we're going to have to uninvite you because the law enforcement there is uncomfortable with somebody from academics in the room. You know what I mean?
What?
In attendance. Yeah. So I'm like, oh man, and then I was like, hey, did you explain that I was doing this and this? And,
yeah.
And, they're like, yeah, but they're still, I know it. And the guy knows it, but everyone else doesn't know it. So they're still, again, that, and this was a few months ago. It wasn't even that long ago. Oh. So it was like a mistrust.
Dang.
I mean, I was disappointed because I'm like, oh, that would be exciting. I love talking about like the future of policing and the direction of that. And I was like, I was kind of bummed out, but I was like, I get it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm not going to be one person and they're going to just welcome me. Like, who? Yeah. It's like, who's this guy? What's his angle? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'd be suspicious of me too.
I guess but
I've known you for years.
I don't think that way. Yeah. Like, I don't sit there and I'm like, oh, he might be a mole. Like,
yeah.
I guess because I trust the work that I do and the people that do the work around me.
But, like a federal agency, I guess, would be like, hey, these things are kind of like classified or whatever you want to.
I guess. But when I look at it, crime is crime.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, what are you talking about that can't be? Unless it's like a method of investigation, I guess. Some sort of methods that we don't want out there yet.
Out their toys or whatever, what they can do. But
yeah.
Who am I going to tell? But
yeah, I guess I could see that.
I suppose I could write about it and write about issues of privacy or whatever surveillance capabilities they have.
I've never seen us be ahead of criminals that know what they're doing. Mm-hmm. So the dumb ones, those are the ones we're going to catch easy. So it doesn't matter if they know what your capabilities are. Right. And then the good ones are the only reason we got the technology we have is because of them.
And the rich ones, they're untouchable.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. It's funny how that works. You also have 2 books?
I do.
2 books.
One is my dissertation, which is policing cyberspace, talking about cultural and structural issues of that.
Okay.
That was in 2009. And then 10 years later, 2019, I came up with it's kind of like a hybrid textbook. It's called Issues and Controversies in Policing. Mm-hmm. Not that I get rich writing this type of stuff, but I personally found for my textbook, I wasn't looking to write a textbook.
Right.
I was looking for a textbook. I was looking for one for my classes, especially because a lot of the books out there on policing, for those of you who are CJ majors, I mean, you guys know this, their policing books are thick. They're about 200 plus pages. They're over $200. They're real basic. Like, for example, I would flip through one and they would just go through the basics of what is a police officer, what is a patrol car, what is that used for? And it's like, no, like I don't care about that as an instructor.
Are you finding that less and less people, young people, are going through CJ degrees, and more career people are coming back to get CJ degrees?
No, I think it's both. CJ is blowing up as a major.
Okay.
I mean, it is becoming more and more popular. At TCU, we have like a record number of CJ majors. I think it's 200 something now, and some like another 100 minors. So we're one of the biggest disciplines within our college.
Really?
So it's growing, yeah, because you know what? Crime is happening. It's interesting.
Well, they're not coming to be cops. What are they going to do?
You know what? We'll talk about that later.
Okay.
But they're interested in being federal agents.
Oh, okay.
But that doesn't mean that they won't eventually become cops. You know.
True. I think in my experience, what happens is you get this idea of what an FBI agent does, and it's got like this fantasy world that it's a lot like being a regular cop. I say a real cop, a regular police officer, and you end up finding out that most of your job is right here.
And a lot of it is X-Files and cool shows like that,
right?
You know, where you're like, hey, the FBI has something that the regular police have something that the FBI doesn't have, and it's not a good thing. The FBI has that cool reputation, and I would say almost all the shows of the FBI is cool.
Right.
But the police have it's a dichotomy. Yeah. You're either cool or you're an idiot.
Yeah.
So you don't see the FBI version of Reno 911 is what I'm saying.
Yes. You know, you're right. And because they started off of a cool premise back with J. Edgar Hoover and all that, you know. Yeah. And it's hard to play that down. So I got this radical idea. So this podcast is going to take a turn for the radical. Okay. And it might trigger some of your viewers. So I'm warning you guys. Good. We're gonna talk about something right here. Good. And this is trigger them. Yeah. So this is a crazy thing that I have personally researched. It's not published yet because I've been busy, and we'll talk about that. We'll talk about my credentials later. Okay. Well, hey, you guys sharpening your spears, go ahead. You know, but I'll say something to kind of deflect a little bit of that. So I got this radical idea. And I think I had mentioned this to you before. You probably got the idea from me. I just didn't know I gave it to you. Yeah, but I'm going to steal it if it is. That's fine. Idea. You can take it. So one of the big questions that I have, I've been teaching at TCU for over 12 years now. And I get the same thing. Hey, I want to be a federal agent. I want to go to law school. I want to be a federal agent. Or I want to, something else. But rarely is it, I want to be a city or county, whatever, sheriff or police officer. Right. And I had sent a questionnaire out there, this is for research. I had sent this questionnaire, and the focus of that is, what will it take for you to become a police officer? You here, rich kid, not to offend anybody, but somebody who is going to a private school like TCU, what is it going to take for you to become a police officer? You know what I mean? And I'm sure most of your audience know this, but that local police don't really make less money than, for most, large city police departments don't make less money than federal agents. In fact, with all the overtime and everything, you probably make more. Right. You know what I mean? So it's not the money. So it must be something else. Right. So what is it? What's it going to take for you and your parent who's paying $55,000 a year plus a lot more, just in tuition plus a lot more in other costs? What's it going to take for you to put in that application for that city police officer? You know what I mean? Like that's a kind of a huge question. So I had asked them, both people who are in CJ in the social sciences and in the College of Science and Engineering. What's it going to take for the nerds? So, and by the way, I bring this up because this is an issue that police departments, modern day police departments, especially in the larger cities, want. They want the nerds. Yeah. They want those college educated young people who are, and there's studies that show that, again, not to diss on anybody who doesn't have a college education, but this is what the research said is
says is people who are women, for example, who have an educational background, less likely to use force, better communicators. I mean, just there's benefits to it. I mean, it's not a secret. It's published research for decades now. What's it going to take for you to hire? And plus, think about it. If you're doing investigators, how cool would it be to have that chemist in-house, where you're like, hey, that officer has a degree in chemistry, or that officer has a degree in computer science or networking, or
that's
whatever.
The big one.
Yeah.
Computer science, because all too often I'll have ideas myself. Like, God, this MDC, the computer in your patrol car, the software. I'm like, this is horribly designed. This was made by somebody that's never done this job.
Right. Who's never been a cop.
Right. Yeah. But you get somebody that's got a computer engineering degree or whatever to develop software. Holy cow. I mean, that one person, give them some sort of, hey, if you make this, we'll pay you like what we would like a third party subcontractor. Don't take advantage because he works for you. Pay the man or the woman, whoever it is. So
what, the big question is, what's it going to take for that computer nerd or biologist or whatever? Again, and I use the word nerd in the highest form of compliment. I mean,
nerd is not a diss anymore. Nerd is it took a 180.
That's a compliment.
It's a compliment.
It's like what's it going to take for these bright, young, smart people to become police officers? Which diverse people, which police departments are really just wanting these days. I mean, you don't believe me? Look at any job ad. I mean, you will see that type of demographic on the video, the poster, whatever they put out. So what's it going to take to hire those types of people, right? So I sent this survey out, and first of all, they had this relatively neutral to negative, depending on I guess depending on the individual, but a lot of them had that negative view of policing as a kind of like a blue collar, low down there job. And I had asked them, I polled them too. I don't have the numbers with me because it hasn't been published yet or anything like that. But I asked them, hey, what would your parents think about you becoming a police officer? And it's highly negative. Like, they would disapprove of that, especially the narrative of, I paid so much money for you to come to this private institution, not for you to become a police officer be a cop,
what is your opinion?
However,
okay, I'm sorry.
However,
I didn't mean to cut you off.
They didn't have the same opinion about the federal agencies. What would your mom think about, or your dad think about you becoming an FBI agent? They're like, highly approve. They would be proud of me. Versus the opposite for cop.
And I would argue that the amount of bad guys for the same type of crimes, like that's the beauty of a big city police department, is you can specialize. If you want to be a white collar detective, you have that option.
You're doing identical.
Yeah, it's the same work. Yeah, it's the same work. So
in fact, the officers are embedded, the detectives are embedded in these federal task forces and stuff. Yeah,
especially if they get some notoriety for doing good work, like you end up taking them to school.
So they want to do that. Okay. They want to do the investigations.
Okay.
But you know what's in the way?
Patrol.
Yeah. Patrol. That's your answer right there.
Okay.
If, again, we're talking radical ideas.
Yeah.
If you want that type of person, and I already know the reaction from the police community because I had thrown this idea out there. But it's one of those things where you have to kind of think about, and then it'll resonate, and you're like, you know what? Maybe.
Well, the FBI does it.
That's exactly it.
I mean, they're not out in the field.
What you need to do is have two separate tracks.
Yeah.
Patrol track and investigative track.
We did have this conversation.
We had that conversation.
We did have this conversation.
And now I have the data to back it up.
Okay.
Yeah. And I said, hey, how would your parents feel, and how would you feel if you could skip the patrol stuff, the writing tickets, the whatever, and just go in investigations and stay there your entire career? And they were overwhelmingly like positive. They were big on that. They're like, yeah, you know what? Forget the federal agencies. If I could do the investigative stuff, we're talking about, like, again, these nerds.
Yeah.
They're like, I want to do that type of stuff, but I have no interest in pulling people over and doing and think about it, on the flip side, there's a lot of officers who want to stay in patrol, but you get promoted and then you're out of patrol.
Yeah.
And why should that person sacrifice their promotional rankings to do something that he or she really loves to do. They should just keep getting promoted. Now, you could get technical about that. That's kind of the gist of it, right? You could get technical. Hey, you're going to have to cross train. You're going to have to be able to do both of them. But one of the questions that, or one of the comments that I always get is, yeah, but you can't really do, you know, good investigative stuff without the street knowledge, right? But it's like, you could learn that stuff.
Yeah.
You could learn it.
Yeah.
I mean, like you said, the FBI does it. So you can't really say that, hey, they don't know what they're doing.
Right. I don't think it's mutually exclusive either way. I can see that patrol made me the detective I am. Mm-hmm. But looking at the job that I do when I was just in the office doing the detective work, I could learn it. It's going to take a while.
Right.
You'd have to have a good training program in place.
Right. Right. You're exactly right.
So that is, when you go to an academy, it's going to have to be based on just investigative work.
Right.
So
2 tracks. One's going to be really heavy on the investigative stuff.
Right.
And then again, we're talking about like a major paradigm change in policing.
Yes.
And the reason why I bring this up is because if we keep doing what we're doing in policing, you're headed towards a rocky future.
Yeah.
Very few people, relatively few people want to become officers these days.
Right.
You know what I mean? This is for a fight for the survival of policing as we know it.
Yes.
You know, so you're going to have to evolve and think of radical things outside the box. You know what I mean? Because where you're headed right now is not a rosy, bright picture for the future. I mean, you have a lot of disgruntled officers. You have a lot of people disinterested in policing. You have a lot of people who are not interested in protecting or forwarding the reputation of police. But if you could but look at the FBI now, not talking about the recent political stuff. Yeah. But if you look at historically the reputation of the FBI, they don't have those issues. You know, they're professionals.
Right. But they're also in the shadows.
Right.
You don't see them.
I get it. But again, if you fill your agency or your organization or your profession with enough professionals,
yes,
you're not gonna be known as the bumbling, idiots or the Keystone Cops, or you're gonna have like, hey, here's our detective team or our investigative team, and hey, they are FBI level, whatever that means,
right?
And they come out and they do their thing, and then you have the patrol people. They're cross trained, they know what they're doing, So I see it as that it's gonna have to kind of tie in education. There's a whole thing to it. They tie in education. Maybe have like I was talking about this with my leadership class in policing. And it might be one of those things where it's like an ROTC. Yeah. You know what I mean? Where, hey, you're getting your college degree, you're getting your investigative stuff, depending on which track you are. Then you do some physical stuff on the side. I mean, it's radical. It would require reorientation of the state, TCOL or whatever
I could see that being a federally funded project to... One, it could be a political move to show like, hey, we're trying to reform policing, but not in the direction you wanted. Right. We're trying to do it to make more professionals. Right. And I argue all the time that we are in a white collar job as far as educational requirements, because and you can say yes or no, you've got the creds for this, but I don't know any other job other than doctors and attorneys and stuff like that have to do the continuous updated education that we have to do.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Because it's not
40 hours every year.
Yeah, and it isn't just you go to the academy and you went to high school, you go to the academy and boom, you're a cop. Yeah. No, it's continuous. It's not going and shooting at the range. It's legislative updates, cultural diversity. It's CIT, crisis intervention training. I mean, it's non-stop. Right. The amount of training that you have to continuously do, and it's not just that 1 year, it's every year, at least 40 hours. And then the classes that are available that you want to take, that you're interested in, I'll just throw a cool one out there. Drug recognition class, like where you learn what drugs do, what they look like, all that stuff. I guess I'm not a drug chaser by any means, but that's a cool class. So you'll get a lot of officers that want to sign up, especially new officers. They want to sign up for that type of class, and that's a 40-hour class all by itself. So you show me another profession that is, it sits on that cusp of blue collar, white collar. You're performing what I consider a lot of white collar at larger departments anyway. Right. I can't speak for the smaller ones. The smaller department I went to, there's still a lot of continuous training, but not a lot of practical application.
Well, what's interesting comparing that to my profession, which is, academia.
Right.
I've never taken a class that teaches me how to teach. I mean,
really?
Yeah.
I've taken a course that taught me how to teach.
No, I went to a place that was, they show you how to do research.
Yeah.
But the teaching is almost like an afterthought.
That must be why your students like when I teach better than when you teach. They tell you.
Probably.
I fill in for Johnny every once in a while, and he's got to go out of town.
Thank you for doing that. They get tired of hearing me all the time, but they're like, let me bring in a cop. And
dude, I love it.
Yeah,
I love it.
So it's fun. It's fun when the cops get there, because again, we talk about policing from the textbook, from the research, but to hear it from somebody who does it is really fun for the for the students.
But let's go back to your idea. I like that. I think that's a cool idea. I would love to implement that where I'm at. Just fuck it, just to see if it works.
That's what I'm saying.
Why not?
It's a radical idea, but hey, you need something right now.
But it's not so radical where we're like, this has never been done. Nobody knows how this will work. It's being done. It's been done. You're just changing agencies and applying it to local police.
If you look at the original vision of August Vollmer, who's the father of modern day policing, that was the vision that he had.
Yeah.
This professional officer who was book smart, who was physically sound, mentally sound, physically fit, who took really advanced classes and everything, and was the college educated smart cop.
Yep.
Who can make expert discretion, not like this robotic cop that we ended up having, and not because of anything wrong with the officer, but that was by design. They tried to make this cop like almost like a computer algorithm. Yeah. If this happens, then you do this. But you can't do that for every scenario. Yeah. And we know what happens when you try to when you're a cop or you're an officer and you're a blunt instrument. I mean, you're gonna just write a ticket no matter what, or you're gonna arrest no matter what. I mean, that's just a recipe that does not work in this day and age. I mean, you have to use that discretion.
Right. And policing needs were different when that was designed. It's like, what other authority do you have besides blood feuds? Right.
So, hey, I'm just telling, my friend, Daniel Cesny over in Grand Prairie, he's the chief there. He's like, hey, policing is really the victims of, sins of the father. He's like, hey, there's a lot of stuff that officers used to get away with. Yeah. Not anymore, because of cameras and everything. So, hey, you got to be smart these days. You have to use communication, and you can't.
And I don't even think it's necessarily getting away with anything. Policing has been nonstop. What are the needs of the citizens today? Because we're still on the needs of the citizens from the year prior. So that takes time to catch up. And Rodney King, that was policing 101. At its time. Until citizens got a chance to see what that looks like, because it never affected them before. Right. So now they see it and they're like, okay, I know we said that's cool on paper, right? But seeing it, it's not cool. Like now we need this stuff. So policing is a constant state of catch up. All right. We need you. Body cams. That was all predicated off of a false narrative. Hands up, don't shoot. All that stuff was debunked. Your FBI investigations and all that stuff. Yeah. So, but a good thing came of that. Body cameras. I was a proponent of body cameras before they were really even out. Right. So having that option available now it's a regular thing. Like now you see a department, you guys don't have body cameras. Like, what the hell?
Yeah, you guys need to be careful with that.
And exactly for that. It's not because you're out there doing wrong things. It's just, this is where we're at now, because we're a community-oriented service. Right. This is what the citizens want, so that's what we're getting. As long as it's in the realm of legality and reasonableness and all that, I think body cameras, that's a reasonable request. Right. And cops hate
and you had a prosecutor. I mean, they need to see the video.
Right.
They're like, where's the video?
Right. And now that's the other thing is we've gotten too heavily dependent on that. Officers need to, and it's not any one person's fault. But officers need to become more articulate now.
Right.
Because if you were as articulate as you were prior to body cams, then there wouldn't be an issue.
Right.
Your district attorney is probably going to be more likely to take it if you can paint the picture because your video wasn't there. And that's where we're falling apart currently.
Which goes to show you, hey, you need that adaptable officer these days.
Yes.
I mean, you just need somebody who is comfortable with change and who is smart about it.
Yeah. When I was, because I had law enforcement in the family, my dad, and then I had a cousin who's a Michigan State trooper, and both of them told me, like, if you're going to get in this line of work, and we're talking freshman year of high school, if you're going to get in this line of work, you need to know how to write.
Right.
So screw off in all your other classes if you want, but you have to take writing serious. So my dumbass, because I did enough to stay eligible for sports, but I took all advanced English classes, and my mom had to sign basically a note that said, you realize your son's not the brightest bulb. Are you sure you want it? Because if he fails, he fails. And she's like, yeah, it's what he wants to do. So she signed off on him, and I excelled. But it made me so much better in college and so much better as a cop. And, I write, I write dissertations on
writing is just a part of life. I mean, nobody looks down at you for writing really well, but if you write poorly, people will be like, hey, they then just start questioning your intelligence.
Yes.
You know, so it's one of those things.
Grammar Nazis.
Yeah. but that's just the way it is in any discipline. I remember taking computer science classes, and they were like, internal documentation within the program. You have to use plain English to describe what you're doing.
Yeah.
And if you have that, it's a better program. I mean, it's just how it is. So yeah.
I like that idea though, man. Now you got my brain going. This is why I don't like talking to you, because we end up doing this, and I lose track of what I wanted to talk about.
That's what I'm saying. It's just something that you got to think about. I mean, I get it. The knee jerk reaction is that'll never work. These investigators who don't have the street experience they're not good, but people can learn. I'm just saying.
What's easy to call bullshit on that is I've got several crime analyst people that work at they're not cops, but damn it, they send me emails because I keep in touch with them. Her name's Tanisha Burke. She'll work with her. She will send me emails like, hey, I noticed these trends and these trends over here. They match what's going on this side of town. And then I saw that this vehicle was involved. Like, you're a crime analyst. Like, you figured that out just from looking at data. So, if she can get some of the stuff that I've seen other detectives can't even pick up on.
People are smart.
People can adapt and learn.
There's a lot of smart people out there that, hey, if you do something long enough, you'll pick up the patterns and you'll get that experience, whether or not you're the one doing the chasing.
Right.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
It's like in jiu-jitsu, you get these guys that it's a nerd sport now. Like the nerds are the ones that dominate, chess masters and biochemists and stuff like that. Like, these are our top jiu-jitsu players. So it's that thinking ahead and strategizing and all that stuff. So
I remember one of the breakdowns watching, some of these jiu-jitsu videos, and it's like they're commenting on this one. I forget who it is, but he'll get his ass kicked in the beginning, and they're like, he's not. He's just figuring it out.
Yeah.
He's figuring out the tactic, and then you'll see in the second round, he knows exactly what to do. It's just like he's playing that chess match. Yeah. So I'm like, man, they're right.
Yep.
This dude is just
Floyd Mayweather is a boxer that does the same thing. He goes in, and it's like the first 6 rounds, he just is not eating punches. He hardly ever gets touched, but he ain't throwing any punches. He's just dancing
doing it
around.
in a smart way, not getting hurt.
But he's learning timing and the movements.
Exactly it.
And he'll feint and see what the guy bites on. And then the next thing you know, he's winning.
That's right.
And it's why some people think he's a boring fighter. I think he's a genius.
Yeah. No, he's boring.
And he makes a lot of money doing it. So
that's true. But
hey, Floyd, if you ever get a chance to see this show, we're looking for a sponsor. God, that'd be funny. Being sponsored by
have him come on.
Yeah, I'll just be all blinged out, just wearing all the Floyd Money Mayweather stuff. But all right, so next thing, your second book, you said you're doing that as a / textbook.
Yeah, that's just something that there was a need for it. I didn't want to write it, but I didn't want all the like extra basic stuff. I just wanted to jump into the issues ranging anywhere from use of force, LGBTQ policing, you know, women in policing.
Did you say D? There's a D now?
LGBTQ or something plus.
Yeah. All the letters.
Yeah. So, you know, there's that.
Okay.
Again, just like issues of racial profiling, you know, just stuff. I like people to just jump into it.
Yeah.
Here's what the research says, and hopefully that sparks classroom discussion. You know what I mean? So I've been able to, and one of the biggest thing with that book was I was able to read it. And one of the most nerve-wracking and possibly difficult things about teaching and policing, having not been a cop, is to teach police officers. You know what I mean? Like, what can I tell you
right
that I've never done about your own job? You know what I mean? So it's always like, hey, who's this guy here? You know, so for me to kind of be able to successfully teach that and do it for so long and write a book about it and have, you know, really positive feedback on the book, you know, to me, that's like a huge compliment. I'm like, okay, as long as I please you guys, then I'm not misrepresenting you. But hey, this book is not my personal opinion. I mean, I sprinkle some throughout, especially stuff on like, for example, profiling and stuff like that. So I have a good friend in LAPD. He's like, hey, I cite your book all the time because, hey, you're the one who has this quote in here, who nails it, basically. You know what I mean? And that's kind of what I'm aiming for. Is just kind of.
I didn't do any profiling when you came out on ride along with me, did I?
I don't remember. I remember we just pulled over. That was hardly a ride along. That was like, hey, come over, hang out. Hey, there's a patrol. Let's hop in the patrol car and sign this, and let's hit the streets for a little bit.
Okay. It worked though, right?
Yeah, it's fun. Yeah. I mean, I had a good time. But you know, one of the things that he likes to quote is I always say, hey, you know, profiling is just pattern recognition. You know what I mean? It's just everyone does it in every job. It's just noticing patterns. That's how you make sense of the world. Yeah. And then it's how you react to those patterns. You know what I mean? So you can't go into any profession. And I like to use like Starbucks baristas or waiters or waitresses, you know, servers. After a while, you'll start noticing patterns.
Who's going to tip well? Who doesn't tip well?
Exactly.
Yeah. I used to waiter, so
age. You know, and I bring this up in my class. Hey, college students, you know, apparently you guys suck at tipping. You guys are horrible tippers.
Yeah,
you know,
they ain't got no money.
Yeah. You know, I'm like, they're just happy they're not dining and ditching.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, so you have, you know, age, location, time, you know, all this. Race is one of them. You know what I mean? It's part of the overall thing to manage risk, minimize danger, manage risk. I mean, that's all it is. But unfortunately, you know, race is kind of one of them. And it's something that, quite honestly, the servers do too. Yeah. It's less consequential. That's the thing with policing. I mean, you do it, it's literally illegal to do that.
Well, and most people, when you try to tell them that, the first thing that comes to their mind when you're going to racially profile a black person, and I give them the example, I'm like, no, I work in a predominantly black neighborhood. So when I see a BMW with two college-age white boys in that neighborhood, they don't fit. Yeah. I'm not racially profiling. They just don't fit the normal demographic. That car doesn't fit the normal. You know, it doesn't have a paper tag on it. It doesn't have this, doesn't have that. You know, where I'm at, it's a land of paper tags. So everybody's got a paper tag. Where I'm at, that's normal. Right. But if I'm in this neighborhood where my house is at and I see a paper tag, you know, and kind of a dilapidated car coming around the corner, I got my eyes on that car. That's from my experience. That car doesn't fit this area. That's not like you said, it's a pattern recognition.
I will say this, racial profiling exists. And it's, to me, it's definitive. I mean, it exists. I mean, it might not be like, again, people watching this might be police officers and like, hey, I've never seen it or done it. I don't know anybody. And all I have to say is, hey, just because you haven't done it yourself or seen it or aware that you're doing it, it exists in the United States. Right. I mean, it's just out there. There's a triangulation of data, multiple sources of data to show that it exists, from decades of research, you know, in terms of the data gathered from police departments.
Yeah. I just gave you an example of something I've done.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a factor, not the factor.
but I'm just saying sometimes it's the factor. I mean, sometimes. So there's research on it. If you ask like black communities, poor black communities, they will attest to it, you know. And sometimes if you ask black police officers and minority officers, they're like, yeah, it happens. And it has happened to me. You know, I know a couple of them, that are like, no, I was clearly racially profiled. One was a bigger incident. One was a smaller incident, but he's like, oh no, the cop pulled up next to me, looked at my window, got behind me, and then pulled me over. You know what I mean? So it's like, so it exists. The most smoking gun that I know that it exists is there's a study, and this was over 1 million police stops that have analyzed. And I know cops out there are like, hey, look at that car over there. Can you tell me the race of that driver or whatever? I hear that a lot.
Yeah.
You know, and they're like, hey, it's impossible to see people inside. But there's a study. I don't have it. You could Google it, but over 1 million traffic stops over a span of a few years. And what they found was racial profiling exists in the daytime. At night, when it's dark, it virtually evens out.
Because you can't see inside the vehicle. Yeah.
But they were like, there's data. And again, this is, I'm trusting the data.
Yeah.
But they're like, hey, they compared daytime and nighttime. And they're like, daytime is when it happens, when you can see in the vehicle. And that's really their, again, to me, I call it a smoking gun because like they analyzed 1 million stops. I'm like, whoa, that's a huge data set. I mean, that's big data right there. So I'm like, whoa, that's a lot. So,
okay.
I didn't do the research myself. No, I'm just saying like somebody did it and I'm like, wow, that's pretty compelling evidence.
Looking at it on paper. Yep.
It's the culmination of things. Sometimes, you know, the whole thing with unconscious bias these days, it's sometimes you don't realize you're doing it.
Yeah.
That's a whole thing. So,
okay. Yeah. The research for that stuff, like I said, it's how do you improve from it now?
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, okay, what are we doing to combat that? Well, I know we do, you know, cultural diversity. We do just making people aware of the numbers alone.
Yeah, and maybe that might be it.
A deterrence in itself. Like, if you're out there and you're like, oh shit, like everybody I pulled over today was an Asian dude. Like, something's not right. I
don't have the answers, quite honestly, and I don't know. You know, some people are like, hey, need more training, but it's, you know, I've seen that type of training before. It depends on the officer. You know, some sit there like arms crossed and like, oh, this guy's just full of crap or whatever it is, BS. I don't know.
Yeah.
So some take it seriously, some don't. Yeah.
There's so many factors into that stuff, man.
And then you bring in the wrong guy and they're just calling you a racist basically. And it's like, nobody wants to hear that. Yeah. I mean, that's ridiculous.
Yeah. And is it a city that supports their cops? Is it a city that doesn't? Is the hiring process, you know, what are the standards of hiring? What are, you know,
it's becoming more hazardous for the officer. I mean, think about it. Most large cities now are requiring you to put down race and record that data. Yeah. You know what I mean? So you could easily run a statistical test and be like, hey, you're significantly, you know, pulling people over who are black or Hispanic or whoever compared to the rest of the officers, you know? So,
excuse me. Yeah.
It might be, that might be a thing now. So it's kind of like, I could see a reverse effect where like,
I don't
if he's
think
black, I'm not going to pull him over.
I think as long as I've been a cop, that's always been a stat. Yeah. Like when you pull someone over, I think they call it a blue form or something. Yeah. You check the boxes, like, you know, it was daytime, nighttime. Yeah. This is the reason for the stop.
I don't even know how accurate those are. I mean, sometimes it's the cop checking it down. Sometimes it's
but do you risk? Do you risk being wrong because your body cam is going to?
Yeah, I don't even know. Like I said, I don't. It's hazardous, is what I'm saying. It's a touchy subject. It's very complicated. Yep. You know, I don't do any research on race and policing and stuff like that. I just kind of, in my book, I just like, hey, here's what the research shows, and
just to get the conversations kicked off.
Yeah. Again, not accusing anybody of being racist per se, you know, but sometimes, you know, it exists in all professions. This bias. Hey, I naturally gravitate towards these people, and I, you know, maybe think these people assume they're going to be low performers. You know what I mean?
Right.
In my profession, I'd be like, oh, there's the, there's the frat boy. So he's going to be this, and there's a, so who knows?
I get you.
I try to be cognizant of that.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah. Now as far as classes that you teach, so what's your range of classes that you normally teach?
Oh, I teach just a bunch of different things. Policing classes, like I teach controversial issues in policing. Away from policing, I teach a theory class. Intro, critical issues.
What's the theory class designed to do?
Just understand why people commit crime.
Okay.
It's a loaded question. I mean, it's a complete, I could ask your audience, hey, why do people commit crime? There are over a dozen answers.
Oh, for sure.
What I mean? And each answer is a different theory. And here's what's important about theory. What you believe caused a person to commit crimes or commit a crime will dictate what you're going to want to do about it and how you're going to judge that person.
Yeah.
What your attitude is. You know what I mean? If you think that it's a rational, one of the theories is rational choice or rationality. If you think that they chose it, then you might want to punish them because you're like, well, he knew that it was wrong. He knew what the laws are, and yet he chose to do it anyway.
Yeah.
So screw that guy. I'm going to throw. But what if it's somebody with mental health issues? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Are you still going to treat him that way?
Right.
If he was under, he's bipolar and off his medication, and he attacked a cop.
Or even worse, was never diagnosed.
Yeah, never diagnosed, but he attacked you.
Yep.
You know what I mean? I get it. The crime was committed, but are you going to want to punish as severely? You know what I mean?
And
and will the punishment help?
I was going to say, I always try to get people, I'm like, what is the purpose behind punishment for you? Yeah. What is the purpose behind any punitive measures? Is it justice? Is it, is it rehabilitation? What are you trying to do? If it's a mental health issue, that's just, that could be solved in 10 minutes. Give him his pills.
You're going to take him for treatment.
Yeah, right.
I mean, what is jail going to help this guy? You know what I mean? Or somebody with a physical addiction, is jail going to help this person? Or should you do something else?
Right.
You know what I mean? And maybe it might be, hey man, you took you took a bruise for that. Maybe if you had that discretion, maybe you're like, hey, you know what? This person's clearly not mentally well. I'm not going to go ahead and file that assault charge or whatever it is on, and maybe I'll take them to the treatment place.
Yeah. One of the things that you talk about radical ideas, and I don't really consider this radical, but what do you think about this? One of the things that drives me crazy is, I see recidivism and stuff, these repeat offenders, and not all of them, but some of them are like, I got a felony on my record. Like, I did my time, but I'm never going to get a decent job. This is the best job I can get, slinging dope or whatever it is, because I'll never make that type of money. And I'm not going to go work, 40 hours to make just enough to live on. So my idea is like, and I don't really think it's a crazy idea. Just if you did your time, you did your time. Why do you have this
stigma,
this tag on you now forever or however long it lasts?
Yeah, there's a theory on that, like labeling theory, Yeah. And I agree with you. I mean, you have to question yourself on what you want. What is the purpose of the CJ system?
Yeah.
If you want to punish, then we're doing a good job because we punish the hell out of people, whether you believe it or not. And this is really talking about CJ and stuff like that. This is the irony of our CJ system. We think we're too lenient, but we're actually very punitive.
Yeah.
The reason why we think we're too lenient is because of revolving door justice.
Because people keep getting out.
You lock him up and then he's out. His plea bargain's super fast out there doing it again. It's not because we don't want to lock him up, but there's not enough space for him.
Yeah.
I mean, there's other bigger criminals and more violent ones.
Yep.
So now he comes back and he has that label. He's been arrested. I mean, then all the recidivism stuff kicks in. I mean, is he going to find a job? Can he find housing? All those things that are factors with recidivism, which means, recommitting a crime and going back to jail.
Yeah.
Depends on what you want to do. If you want to keep with the narrative that he's a scumbag and he deserves it, then yeah, you can do that. But know this, that's not practical.
Yeah.
And there's literally a price to pay for that. And this is not some liberal soft on crime, but if you follow the logic, if that guy can't get a job, what do you think he's going to do?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And what's crazy is they will get a degree in prison.
Right.
They'll get the schooling they need, whether it's just an associate's or some sort of certificate. And they can't do it on the outside.
Yeah. And there's a lot of guys that try.
Yeah.
They did their thing. They did the time, and they just want a second chance. But, but the other half of the equation is, if you're an employer or, do
you take that liability, the risk?
Don't you want to know? You know what I mean? Like,
right.
I have the right to know that he did that.
Yeah.
So it's super, super complicated. But we just know this. When I say we, I mean the academic community knows that police historically have not been the solution.
Right.
You know what I mean? You can't just make an arrest and, hey, all the problems go away.
Yeah.
And sometimes you do more harm than good. I hate to say that, but it does more harm than good.
And there's other factors too, like pedophiles. Like, I'm not saying give them the felony and then it's gone once they get out.
It's like, what do you do, right?
Yeah.
Because you do want to label them, but at the same time,
that's a different one.
Yeah, I don't even know what to do, because I'm like, I've done some research on that, and judges in California and Texas have come up with creative ways to kind of keep them in jail longer, but they got to come out eventually.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then what? And then how do you deal with it?
Yeah. I don't know. I don't have an answer for that one, but that would be an argument for having the labels after you get out.
But I will say this, for people who don't want to spend the money to give those people like, hey, free. If I got to pay for it, why do they get a free college education in jail? Right? Yeah. Why do they get, that's not fair, but know this, you're already paying for it through incarceration. That's the most expensive thing that you could possibly pay for. That's room and board. So if you could, again, it will require a mindset change from punishment to practicality, basically. If you don't want this guy to do this anymore and you want him to not go back to jail, not have another victim or victims, and pay taxes, then you're going to have to invest a little bit of money in him. Job training program. Yeah, get him on his feet, fund stuff where it's like reentry, where a parole officer isn't just busting people, but helping them find jobs. Yeah. Hey, I get it. It's a job and maybe you're looking for a job, but I don't think you want the job that those guys are willing to do. I mean, like dishwasher, or, just something to where they could build up their credibility in life again. Yeah. Yeah. And then work their way up to cook, like there's like, they could be like a mechanic. I mean, there's a lot.
Some sort of trade service.
Yeah. But I'll tell you how screwed up the system is. So we were doing some research on like a halfway house, and we got to interview a few guys living in there. And one guy was expressing what a crap situation he was in, because he served time and he got out. Okay. So he got out early and he got a job as a mechanic, because he's good with his hands and he has he knows his way around cars. And the guy, the employer's like, hey, show up on Monday, and then we will give you bring your paperwork on Monday. So he goes to like this reentry place, which I was doing research with, and he was kind of trying to scramble to get ID and stuff. Oh yeah. So he's like, I don't have an ID, right? They want my birth certificate to get the ID, right? So he goes to the DMV or wherever, and they're like, well, we need your birth certificate. It's like, I don't even know, like, yeah. Some of these people, they don't even know where they were born exactly. Yeah. That's not a possibility. And he's like, hey, here's what I do have. My TDCJ card.
Jail paperwork. Yeah.
Yeah. My jail paperwork. Yeah. And they're like, nah, this is not good enough. You know what I mean? So they refuse to issue the ID. And then he goes to the employer on Monday and be like, hey, I can't. And it was a pain in the ass for him to get there. He had to borrow money to get on the bus. Takes him like a few hours to get there. Yeah. And they're like, sorry, man, we just can't. We can't hire you based on this. But I'm like, what kind of BS is like, He's like,
how hard would it be to make an out processing like, 2 weeks of admin out processing where you get all that paperwork before you hit the streets?
Exactly.
It wouldn't be that hard.
And it's just the system so screwed up because it's like, is this not a government issued photo ID? You know?
It is.
Yeah.
I mean, technically.
Why is not good, but you would rather get this, 30-year-old crusty paper with like nothing on it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it just doesn't make sense to anyone, really.
No.
So you could kind of see that. But yeah, I mean, they need help. Again, it's not trying to sound soft on crime, but if you want to save money and if you want these people to, they're going to be out there.
Yeah.
They could be out there as working people or they could be out there as potential criminals again.
Yeah, I don't want to set them up where committing crimes is the better option.
Right.
And that right now, I feel like that's kind of where we're at for anybody that gets wrapped into the system with a felony on their record. Especially when you got a felony on your record at 17 years old. Like, I remember what an idiot I was at 17, at 21,
Yeah. And, people commit the most crimes during their teenage years.
Yeah,
I mean,
the brain's still developing.
Yeah.
So
there's a book. There's a great book that I read recently, and this is one of the. And I'm shocked that it took me so long to read it, but it's called Code of the Streets.
Mm-hmm.
And
I learned my code from the streets.
But it's interesting because I assigned it to my class, and I'm always assigning new books, and it's this Code of the Streets book. I'm like, I'm looking for some sort of street ethnography and to apply these theories of crime, and they read it and they're like, hey, why did so-and-so character do this? But that book, when I started reading it, and this is really one of the real famous books in criminology, I just never got around to reading it, but explains stuff like, why do people fight police officers who are poor and minority? Why do they tend to fight police officers? And why do they buy Jordans and iPhones and stuff like that? Why do they, why teen pregnancy such a high rate in these areas? So an outsider looking in from a lens that we don't understand would seem like those are very irrational things to do. Like, man, why would they do that? Why would he spend $300 on a pair of Jordans when they don't have like money to buy food, but that book explains there's a culture, just like there's a police culture, there's a culture to the streets.
Yeah.
And things mean a lot to them. And it's very rational. It's a form of survival actually, to have that type of stuff. And most of it goes to like, the idea of dignity.
Yeah.
Everyone wants a form of dignity, no matter how rich or poor you are. I mean, you want people to treat you like a human being and not like an animal so
I've had a work motto, even if I get in a fight with you, once I get the cuffs on you, I'm going to pick you up, dust you off, make sure you're all right. So are you good? I'm good. Yeah. I got a little cut on my elbow. You really threw me on that one, you know, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I don't take it personal.
Yeah.
I try not to. Every once in a while you get spun up. They say the right words and do the right moves. But we're human. And
but that's what gets you in trouble. If the cuffs come on and then you try to do something extra
afterwards, you're
going to be in trouble for that.
Nope. Don't do that. I tell officers don't punch them on the ground. Not necessarily because it's bad, but because the most common injury to officers is a broken hand.
Oh, you're thinking about the officer's hand?
Well, I'm thinking about both.
Oh, okay.
And this is where I give you a little bit of my control tactics background, but the point of getting somebody under control, if they're not being compliant when you're trying to arrest them, is you got to get them to the ground. I can't arrest the non-compliant person standing.
Yeah.
It's just not going to happen. So got to get them to the ground. So typically, if I can't get you to the ground through, some sort of, arm manipulation or whatever, I got to go to strikes. If I'm not going to use my Batman belt. Mm-hmm. So a guy your size, I'm going to try to go hands on with first, because that is the logical path. That's the standard path. Hands, feet, fist, all that stuff. So I'm going to try to take you to the ground. As soon as that's not working, then I'm going to go to strikes. And the distraction strikes, you've learned that. So to get your mind off it, so I can get you to the ground. Now, if I get you to the ground and you're still fighting around, I got you where I need you. If I start throwing strikes with a closed fist, that's super dynamic. You're connected to the ground. any hit, especially to the head,
it's like punching.
Yeah, it's like
without
punching.
any give.
Yeah, it's like punching into the Smith. So you get a lot of bust. I'm like, just use an open hand. Like if you're gonna throw a strike, it goes a long way. But
People also have to understand that taking a guy down and being able to put handcuffs on him one-on-one is incredibly difficult if he's not cooperating.
I think it's almost. I think it's
impossible.
I think it's almost impossible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, this is why, for example, you'll see a lot of officers kind of dogpile a guy and one person per arm and one per leg. You know what I mean? I mean, you kind of do it overboard to just get them to just put their arm back.
I try to tell people a 90-pound wiry female that has no intentions of being put in cuffs is a hard fight. And I've got my purple belt in jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
So,
it's hard. I'm just saying it's extremely hard, like one-on-one.
Yeah.
Again, there's rules to policing. You can't just kick some guy's ass and knock him unconscious and then cuff him. But, you have to kind of manipulate that.
Yeah.
But to get them and handcuffing is actually harder than it looks. I mean, it's not as like, hey man, you know what I mean?
So we can jump in. We can jump into that. How would you know, as a professor, how would you know how hard it is to cuff somebody?
Because I did something crazy. You know what I mean? I did a crazy thing. I put my money where my mouth is, and I walked the walk. And I went through a police academy, and now I'm a commissioned peace officer in the state of Texas.
That's awesome.
Full on. I mean, I'm a reserve, because I'm doing the professor thing.
Yeah. But not many people can say that they've done what you've done from your world.
And hopefully that gives me a little bit more, credibility,
little street cred,
a little bit of street
with the cops
cred
that listen.
Yeah. And I have such a unique perspective now that, hey, now, don't get me wrong, I have not completed everything to where I'm hitting the streets yet. So that's why I was like reluctant. I wouldn't say reluctant to come on this podcast. I wanted to do it, but I was thinking, hey, I'm still too early to do it until I...
No, what's cool, and this is my thought, what's cool is it's like, because I'll have you on more and more. But
okay.
You know what I mean? But I got you right now at the newest part.
Right.
Where your mind's at now versus where your mind's going to be at a year from now.
Right.
A year of hitting the streets, however often you decide to do it. And then we can compare that again, assuming the show's still going that long. My first goal was a year. I just want to do it a year. So we're at 6 months right now. We're at the halfway point. So,
I just finished a few months, maybe like about a month or two ago.
Okay. How come I didn't get an invite to the badge pinning?
It was it was at it's a long story, but it was
did they add you into the promotional ceremony?
Yeah. And it was not, there's only 4 of us.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a thing. There was no so for 7.5 months, I would do my day thing, and then I would go to the academy at night. I don't recommend doing that.
It's rough, ain't it?
Oh man, it's just Monday through Friday,
Yeah.
And it's tough because I have a family and everything. So it's just, but 7.5 months, it was kind of brutal. I've learned a lot, you know what I mean? There's a lot to a police academy. A lot of it is aimed towards passing a state test, which is it's no joke. I mean,
which is easy for somebody like you to figure out because you're like, okay, I see I see the direction of this teaching.
I admit that I have an advantage.
Yes.
And that I didn't study that hard.
Yeah.
But it is kind of an ass kicker. Like, it is something that it's 250 questions and it's timed and it's all multiple choice. And, I'm just second guessing myself on a lot of these things. There's exams that you could take online. It's almost like a SAT thing where you could take practice tests.
Yeah.
And those are easy, but then you start learning that test. You start knowing the answers to that test. And then when the real test comes up, which is a pool of like 10, 15,000 answers and combinations or questions and stuff like that, and you don't see most of them you've never seen before, you kind of have to fall back on, hey, your logic and your, hey, this and that. And I have had a background in that. So I admit I didn't study that hard for it. Mm-hmm. And I passed, but it was harder than I thought. Mm-hmm. So it's quite an experience because, you know, at this point in my life, I wouldn't say I'm on autopilot, but I'm pretty good at what I'm doing. Like at TCU, I'm a full professor, you know, which means I've been promoted from assistant to associate and now full professor. So I'm kind of, you know, research is not something that I struggle with. So I could, you know, I've been doing it for a long time, but to kind of do something that's out in left field and I'm kind of bad at, you know what I mean? That I have no familiarity with. Yeah. It's kind of an eye-opening experience. So, you know, like shooting guns and driving cars like a maniac and just, you know, doing the ground stuff. And it's just like, holy crap. Like, I'm getting my ass kicked and I'm not used to it. Yeah. You know what I mean?
We'll take you to the School of Hard Knocks. You can come right out with my team.
Yeah, man. I'll do it when I'm done, you know, but I've still got, you know, like for example, tomorrow I still have some stuff to do. Body cameras. So everything, if in the world of policing, if you're going to carry it, you need to qualify for it.
Basically.
Yeah. Yep. You can't just be like, hey, I love that thing to strike people with. I'm just going to go ahead and put that on my little Batman belt.
Yeah. No, not at all.
Yeah. No. That requires you a 40-hour course to do that. And then we test you and then you got to meet a minimum proficiency level. So, because I had the department, I had commissioned with, outsourced it to a community college. I had to I'm having to requalify for everything just to make sure that I'm up to snuff with the department. You know, other people have graduated and have already hit the streets and everything. But here I am. It's like, hey, yeah, no, you know what? Your qualification was 70% for pistol shooting. Our minimum is 85%. Right. You know what I mean? So then I came in there and, you know, I did it. So it was just like, we just want to make sure, you know, that you're not like doing crazy stuff with doing your gun twirls and stuff, whatever they teach you there.
But I think it's a good practice to have because when you have a standard that needs to be met and has been met for generations, like that's why you're cut above other areas.
You know, I do this thing. There's no shortcut. I didn't take any shortcuts. I mean, I went through a full academy and then some because people have already hit the streets. Yeah. And you're still training. I'm still training, you know, and then some. So, you know, hopefully that gives me enough credibility to where it's like, hey, yeah, no, he really did put in that effort. You know what I mean? I passed the same test that everybody passed. Yep. And then, you know, with reserve, for those of you who don't know, I mean, a reserve officer is a full-on police officer. I mean, we just don't get paid or work, you know, that 40 plus hours a week, but arrest power's literally identical. Yeah. So
once you got the patch on, it's all the same, man.
And it's a weird feeling, you know what I mean? Like I said, I did it for personal reasons because it's something that I was very interested in early on. But it's also like, hey, I write about it. I talk to you about it and guys like you, but it's like, until I do it, I don't really know. Yeah.
No, I consider it street cred. Like, okay, he understands. He's got a level, and the longer you've done it, the more your credibility is going to keep rising now. Right. So so
I was afraid people were, you know, there's some that are already joked with me. Hey man, you're just infiltrating our thing so you could like. Oh jeez. They're just giving me a hard time. Yeah. But there's others that have reached out and be like, hey man, why don't you come out to hang with us? I mean, it's just like come to our side of town and hop in the car with me when I'm working, and it's like, hey, it's fun, it's exciting. So I haven't gotten a chance to do that yet. Again, I gotta
you still
pass all those things. So maybe 2022. That's I think that's when gonna try to do the field training and stuff. So
I'm hoping to get to do some now that you're sanctioned in the same place I'm at. I'm hoping research stuff, like any research stuff you get into, I can, as long as it interests me anyway, I can help.
Yeah. So it was kind of eye opening. Like I said, you know, I don't talk a lot about guns or stuff like that because I don't really know. I haven't fired a gun. And then now I'm more comfortable talking about it and be like, yeah, you know, I'm not a gun nut, but I could understand like this, or not just the mechanics of it, but when to use it, when not to use it, you know, and, you know, just stuff that I think most academics don't have, you know what I mean? Like, I'm just saying, I could see from an outsider point of view, why the hell is he talking about guns? He never fired a gun, or he don't own guns or stuff like that, or he's never been a cop, or
Yeah.
You know,
how does he know? He hasn't been out in the streets.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I've never experienced that, like in terms of the disrespect from faculty as a faculty member. Cause I'm always like, hey, you give us your data. We'll write about it. You know what I mean? I'm getting the information from you. And I think I've been open with that and not having some sort of agenda of, hey, I'm just going to find some real negative thing and write about it.
Yeah. I've always said my job as an instructor is to find, I shouldn't say I've always said, but I have learned as my time as instructor, it's to find gaps. It could be good gaps, could be bad gaps, whatever it is in training. But if there's a need that needs to be addressed, or there's something that I find isn't quite working, it needs to be tweaked or whatever it is, then that's what I do as an instructor. But as a cop, I do it all the time. But I learned that from being an instructor. So now I apply it to everything.
Right.
You know, what are my team's needs? Oh, they're trying to do this, and that, and it's not working. How do I fill that hole with whatever it is they need? Right. So I think you'll be able to give a good perspective on that now, especially it's going to be fun to see you. It's going to be fun to see you go from, assuming you do this on a regular for a while, to watch you go from, okay, what do I legally have? Like, cause you're going to have to process everything as you go through. Cause you're not just talking to somebody. Like, I can go out and I just talk to somebody. I'm not worried about the offense cause I have them down. I know, but your head's going to be, cause I remember being there, your head's going to be like, all right,
very technical.
Yeah. Like, okay, he's doing this. So I got to make this note. I got, all the processes are going to be running through your head, and that's a distraction. That's the danger zone. This is why rookies get hurt or in trouble or and all that stuff. But for you, it's going to be interesting just because you have a different side to it,
right? Where
you've got the research and the academia side.
So that's the big hole that I think is missing.
Yeah.
In policing. And I say this from just me just going through the process. So they teach you about the penal code and all the traffic codes and everything. Again, it's the state test. So you know a lot about that type of stuff. I mean, we're literally, and I had no idea we were going to go sit down in a class and go line by line
through the traffic code,
to an entire traffic code or an entire penal code. And I'm like, holy F, like,
yeah, it sucks.
What are we doing? Like night after night. I mean, it's not what I expected in terms of all that book stuff. It's just, hey, read this and then we'll talk about it reading. And again, it's just a bunch of guys sharing their stories and they're reading it. And I'm like, all right, whatever,
Yeah.
I'm starting.
It's hard to make that class interesting.
It's hard. Yeah. I'm just saying and plus when you've already gone through a full day of work and to show up and I'm just like, this is a beat down. Right. So we learned that. I get it, because you have to know why you're going to make an arrest or not make an arrest. And you're going to have to justify, hey, this is why I put the handcuffs on that guy.
Yeah.
And these are the charges. And it's a weird dance because you're not a lawyer. So ultimately it's up to a prosecutor to do it. It's almost like filing your taxes. Like, why don't you do it? You already have all the information. Why do I have to file it? You know what I mean? So it's kind of like that. You have to kind of, have your probable cause to make arrests or, whatever flexibility that you have. There's a ton of discretion in there. So that's book stuff. And that's fine.
Yep.
That's basically the majority of it. And then the other half is all the tactical stuff, which is driving, defensive tactics, shooting, simunitions, which is going and simulating police incidents, and you go in there and do you shoot, not shoot, communicate.
Shooting paint bullets at each other.
Yeah, shooting paint bullets, and you're acting it out, and they're just saying, I get it. Again, from the mindset of an instructor, I'm like, oh, they just want to see if we're going to shoot right here. If you're willing to shoot. Yeah. You know what I mean? There's scenarios where you have to shoot.
Yep.
And if you don't, then they might question, oh, is this person like just never willing to shoot ever? You know what I mean? And that might be a problem. I get it. It's like, well, no cop wants it. Most cops don't want to shoot people.
And there's also the factor that if you've never been shot with a sim round and you don't know what to expect.
I got the scar right here. Look at this, man.
If you don't know what to expect, that becomes just, the fear is real. The fear is just as real as if you thought you were going to get shot by a real gun.
Yeah. I mean, your adrenaline starts
and now your decision making is totally different. So if you get to where I'm at now, I walk in and your buddy's over there and you're like, you know, you shoot him in the leg and he shoots you back, and it's like you're just used to it. It's no big deal.
Yeah.
And I'm just kidding. We don't really do that. Yes, we do. So it's like the fear is gone.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's where training takes over. So when you get out to the field, you've is it inoculated yourself? Is that the right word?
What do you mean?
Like you've done it so many, the repetition, you're past that point.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean? You get out there, and that's when people who get involved in critical police incidents, they always say, you know, like, I don't know what I did. And you go back to the video footage and they're like, boom, boom. And they had a stovepipe and they're like, boom, you know, they go through all the motions. They're pieing, and they did everything tactically perfect, and they don't recall any of it.
Yeah, it's weird
because muscle memory just took over.
Yeah, it's a weird thing. I mean, it's just, again, so many variables that, you know, hey, if you're going here and what if this person's distracting you, and it's just so many. So it was really fun. That part was really fun. It's super, super stressful. Yeah. Again, I'm not good at it because it's not something I've done before. Yeah.
Are you keeping a journal?
I'm not. It's all in here.
You should start keeping one when you go to the streets.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I mean, I might write a book about it. Eventually, it might. I was thinking about it. It might be like, because I don't want to write about the actual people I went to the academy with.
Yeah, you don't have to use their names.
It might be a fiction. It might be a fictional novel, kind of like a Joseph Wambaugh.
Yeah,
it's real cool.
It's just pseudonyms and stuff.
Yeah, but it's So you learn about that, and that's really great too. I mean, I get it. One of the cool things about it is, you know, you realize how bad you are. Certain things are, I wouldn't say horrible, but when you're not good at it, it's just like again, if you're like 21 and you're not good at a lot of stuff, right? You know, but I've gone through life, and you know, I'm halfway through my career, and it's like, to be like, man, I've been driving my whole life, and it's like, man, I'm knocking down these cones like there's no tomorrow type of thing. You know, I'm just like,
killing cone babies out here.
I'm a cone killer here. Yeah. And you know, and it's after a while you're like, oh, I'm starting to get it now. You know, I back out of my driveway. They're real nice. I'm expert backing out my driveway. Yep. But it's just like, holy crap! Like, you guys are driving like maniacs here and doing all. So that's one of the coolest things, was like being in a police car in the track and just turning on the lights and chasing somebody, again at the department where I'm at now, you know, and I was like, oh man, this feels like fun. Like, this is very like fun stuff to do. So that's good. But the, you know, one part that's missing is the really the perspective training. And that is from that's what I give, and that's what I get in college, basically. So we'll learn theory, we'll learn policing, we'll learn all these things. And it's really why, you know, we had that discussion earlier on, hey, what happens when you arrest somebody? You know, there's a social cost to it. There's an economic cost to that person. Yeah. So the why part is never really covered in a police academy. Yeah. It's just, hey, how do I apply this law? It's just what to do and how to do it. But why or why not? You know, that part's not covered. And I think, and I haven't reached that point yet, I think that's a critical component of policing. You know what I mean? Well, on the streets. Right.
And the thing that stinks about that is there's no, this is the reason, there's, here are all the factors. And we've discussed this many times off site, but, you know, there's a lot of things that go through my head as I'm pulling someone over, and I've already made contact. I'm like, all right, this dude's got 12 kids. He doesn't have insurance on the truck, so I could tow it. He's coming home from work. Right. And then all the factors start to take over, you know, like, is it best for him? Is it best for everybody else? Is that, you know, so you got these factors. How do you teach that in the academy? When I need you to go out to the streets initially, I need a body on the road. I need somebody out there taking calls. You'll learn. This is the argument. You'll learn that stuff as you get experience. Right.
But I'm just saying, there's a lot of guys, even in our academy, who are real gung-ho. They're younger guys. Yeah. And they don't think that way. They're like, hey, yeah, arrest her. Yeah, she did that. And it's like, yeah, but she's an old lady. Like, what threat is she to the community or whatever? But they are so like, hey, you do the crime, you do the time type of deal, and that mentality. And I'm like, you know, and there's somebody in my class too. This is my policing class right now. There's somebody who was a former officer. You know, he's older now and he's retired and everything. He's like, ideally he's going for his college degree now, as a non-traditional student. He's like, yeah, ideally, if I could wave a magic wand, you have to be 30 to be an officer and with a college degree. And he was like, because they don't make certain decisions that are not, they think twice about it in a good way.
Right.
And that's what he was saying.
Life experience, all that stuff.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
Cause you do have some guys in our academy who are like, especially the younger guys, like I have a unique perspective because not only am I around people like you who are officers right now, but I'm also around like command staff.
Right.
So I'm with like police chiefs and captains and commanders and stuff on a regular basis, on a weekly basis.
The ones that forgot how to do police work.
Yeah, but you gotta understand. Yeah, but their perspective is so different.
Yeah,
and very necessary too. But I talk to them and I'm like, hey, there's kind of like an awakening for a police officer. There's like and maybe not everyone goes through this, but there's an early cop that does their thing, arrest, and then they stop, and then I want to say like 5 or...
Yeah, it's usually about the 5-year mark.
5-year mark, and then they have this like awakening or this kind of this revelation. It's like, it's almost like questioning themselves. Why am I doing this?
Yeah. Well, you've got adequate time with the system that you've never experienced in a way you've never experienced, in a way that you don't even experience when you go through the academy, because you can't possibly see the wheels turn. Right. You know what I mean? So you start. You do. You're
a different person after that.
Yeah.
And I always ask them, hey, well, when was that moment? And they tell me different stories. Oh, it was when I arrested this guy and he said this to me, or maybe, hey, there's this kid I keep coming and one day I'm like, screw this, I'm going to take him to McDonald's and we're just going to try to have a conversation.
Yeah.
And it's like that. And then you realize, hey, I get why he's doing this. It's not really his fault. He's not a horrible person. He's a victim of circumstance. And then you start seeing the world a little bit differently.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's measurable. Right. Look at use of force. That's the one I always like. Most use of force is done by that 0 to 5-year officer.
Right.
So, and the numbers back that up all day long. And then you see this decline, and you see the ones that have the least amount of use of force, and that's your 15, 20-year, 25-year dude. Why is that? Then look at their stat. Okay, well, he's still making arrests, maybe not nearly as many as that 0 to 5-year guy, but he's still making arrests. He's still handling just as many calls. You can't avoid that. So what's the difference? The difference is exactly what you're talking about. They realize the fight ain't worth it. And it's not always necessary.
Right.
So the times that they're getting in a fight, it was either unavoidable or absolutely necessary to prevent some other stuff that they saw.
Right.
So,
but it's profound when it happens. I was talking to Robert Rangel, who's the chief of TCU police, and I was having lunch with him, and I'm always trying to like poke the bear a little bit. I'm like, hey, what would happen if shit went down in here right now at this restaurant? We're at the, across the street. And then he's like, well, I would do absolutely nothing. It's a money crime. Yeah, he just wants money. Yeah, I'll be a great witness. My guys will come in here and later on we'll catch the guy later. But he's like, in my younger days, I would have been like ripping up my shirt, showing my Superman thing, and just busting out my and he's like, I don't even like to wear a uniform because of that. I just want to. I got other stuff to deal with.
Yeah.
So he's in his suit and he's like, I would mentally record everything, and then I would be the best witness. And then he's like, why would I take out my gun? Look at all these people around me.
Yeah, that area. I'm thinking the same exact thing.
We're in a crowded restaurant. I mean, am I gonna shoot the guy with the cashier standing next to him like that? What if he shoots back? And look at there's kids around here too.
Yeah, I'm sure you learned in training.
I would rather, they
don't drop.
Yeah,
unless to get a headshot.
Yeah, I'm just saying. And plus, shooting is a lot harder than it looks. I thought, all my years of Call of Duty and Halo, I thought I was gonna be the freaking sniper of I thought every shot I was gonna take was gonna be a headshot.
Yeah,
but it's harder than it looks. I mean, even when you're relatively close to 5-7 feet away, I mean, I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna shoot that head. I'm gonna do the lethal weapon thing where shoot that little smiley face on the freaking guy's face. You know what I mean? But he was like, it's not worth. You have to weigh you have to swallow that pride, and it's not even pride. It's just, you have to be mature about it and be like, hey, what good is me taking out my gun right now? And he steals a couple $100. We'll get him later.
Yeah.
And it'll be under our terms, which is, hey, we'll send in the SWAT team. We know where he lives. We would do a little surveillance, and then we'll send him in. And then it's a controlled circumstance versus, let's just shoot it out at a restaurant, which is nuts.
And that's the cool part where I'm at right now is I'm that second side of that.
Right.
And I get to like, and it's not the SWAT team, but we set up, we get our warrants, and we're in undercover cars. We watch them, and we wait for an opportunity that is the
advantageous
least,
for you and safe for everybody. And just
he's not on high alert, hopefully, and and go in, move in, and get him.
Sometimes I get it. You show up with overwhelming force, like
The hard part, I guess, is fighting we signed up to stop people from doing wrong, and when you see somebody doing wrong.
It's almost like you just naturally react and be like,
so it's like you said, the experience comes the measured and being able to sit back and look. And now if you're uniformed and you're sitting there, you don't have a choice.
That's what I'm getting. I get that. And hopefully the guy that's so psycho to where he's like, oh, there's a uniformed cop.
You're right. It's just a campus cop. They don't realize most of them are retired PD.
But even me, I'm not like some spring chicken. And even me now as a quote unquote cop, and I don't feel that way. And if I see somebody trying to road rage or something, it's like, you have the way, man. I am not going to. I'm not going to start shit with you for that. It's not worth it for me to badge you and then get into a thing on the middle of the freeway or whatever. It's like, no, you're. And
there's plenty of cops who've been wrapped up in that.
That's what I'm saying. I'm like, no. You clearly have huge testicles. I mean, you go ahead and do your thing, man. You own this road, all right?
I think of a South Park episode, but I won't talk about it on here. But it's hard. It is. Even though I'm smarter than I was when I first started, I struggle with if I see somebody doing something wrong. The instinct is like to act, and you have to, especially if you're out with your kids, your family, all that stuff.
I talked to another cop too. He's just like, if I'm out eating with my family, I'm gonna evacuate them first. Like,
absolutely. No question.
Like I'm not here to play hero right now. If I'm not working, I'm going to take care, and then I'm going to call the police and do those things. But
I call it the mama bear mode. You take care of your kids, take care of your wife.
I know it sounds screwed up because it's like, hey, you swore an oath to protect people, but it's like, man.
Well, I become that becomes a liability. I can't do my job that I need to do properly because they're right there. I'm torn between love and duty.
It is. It's not easy. And it's just one of those things. Hey, what you can do certain things, but maybe you shouldn't. Like, for example, if there's an active shooter on campus, I don't know what I'm going to do. You know what I mean? Like, if I'm not in uniform or anything, and if I'm not even supposed to have, that's something that I haven't worked out yet. I'm gonna have to talk to the school administrators and be like, do you want me to have something in my office? You know what I mean? Because like, I get it. If there's an active shooter, I'm gonna be involved in it. I mean, there's no way that I'm gonna have sit back and let somebody like gun down people. But at the same time, it's like, TCU police does not want.
Like I say, you're in different waters, man.
I don't know. It's uncharted territory. That's what I'm saying. It's like, I don't want professors carrying guns, quite honestly.
Now that you got the training you've got.
You got the training, but then I'm like, I'm a police officer, though. But I'm like, I don't know about that guy here. You know what I mean? So it's just one of those things where, if you're going to do, are you going to, as a civilian, like help out with the sweep? I don't know who you are, and it's like they don't know who I am if I'm not in the proper identification. So I don't want to get shot. I could be the active shooter, so it's complicated. I don't know.
It is, and I think, for my opinion, is if you can carry, like if it can get worked out, so you can.
I'm gonna ask because I don't want to get I don't want to get arrested. I won't get arrested for it, but I'll get fired for it. So I'm like, okay, I'm at that. Again, it's uncharted territory. Nobody goes in reverse.
Right.
Nobody goes from like professor to cop. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
it's swimming the wrong direction.
Yeah. So that'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Because I could see the campus cops having your back, knowing the training that you've had.
Yeah.
So
I'm going to have to talk it out with because what's interesting about campus cops is their bosses are school administrators.
Really?
Yeah, because there's somebody over the chief of police, and that is like the provost of student affairs or something like that. It's a different ball game, you know. That's weird. It's not like the chief is the chief. I mean, he's almost like one department within multiple departments.
Okay,
and he's the leader of that one. So,
but still, I would think the administrator would have to.
I would have to keep that little.
Yeah,
neon vest or whatever, and then work out a way to store my gun in my office in a safe.
Conceal carry.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll have to ask about that.
You'll get familiar with it.
I'm just saying I'll have to ask about it because again, it's a no guns campus.
Yeah.
If it was a public university, I could probably do it.
I get it, but you're also under the law now. You're good.
I know. I just don't want to get fired.
Yeah, no, I get it. I understand.
I suppose I could become a full-time cop and then my wife would leave me. And
I'm excited for you to put cuffs on somebody for the first time because it's weird.
It is a weird feeling, even just wearing the uniform. And I've worn a police uniform before working at a jail, but this is different. This is something like, and I've experienced something that I'd not experienced before that's kind of like awesome at the same time. Not just the driving a police car and with the lights on, which is really cool. But it's like I've never gotten a standing ovation before.
Oh, okay.
Have you gotten a standing ovation before?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so I haven't.
Okay.
Because I don't deserve it. Clearly, I don't deserve it. There's nothing that I've done that is like, hell yeah, like, ooh, this is the best. But, when I was wearing the uniform, and this is not the academy uniform. So the academy uniform looks like an EMT blue shirt. It's a
the bus driver uniform.
Yeah, it looked like a bus driver or an EMT.
Not there's anything wrong with bus drivers. We need y'all too.
But the police department had supplied me with a full-on uniform. Mm-hmm. We're talking about belt and gun and everything. And when we walked into the room, during that graduate, again, this is at a community college, so it was like,
but still all fresh and sharp.
Yeah, it was like, you can imagine the background being like a Midsummer Night's Dream. It was like in the theater, and there was half the set was like still there. It was ridiculous.
So was the other students that graduated there in their departments?
Most were.
So yours probably stood out more.
There's 4 of us. And ours, there's her like sheriff and stuff like that, but we were the police department. Most of them are. So we had we're one of the few that were like in our dark blues or whatever you call it. And they stood up and started. I'm like, wow, this feels. And then at the same time, I'm like, oh shit, like what have I gotten myself into? Because it's almost like sending them the kamikaze fighters out. Like adios, guys.
Is that an Asian joke?
Yeah,
can't say that.
So it felt really special. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm doing something important here in life.
Oh man, yeah,
it's a cool feeling to have. Yeah. I'm just saying.
When I promoted, I mean, it doesn't go away. It doesn't go away. I mean, and I'm military too, so I mean, it's all the you get refreshers, like people encourage you because it's a calling. You think you're doing the right thing, and so it's cool when you rank up or you're put on that fresh, that dress uniform and stuff like that. Yeah. It's a feeling of pride. And I don't think it's only with police officers, but like you said, it was different for you than it was in the jail.
And like I said, it wasn't, I never had like a standing ovation before other than like, for example, like graduation, you know what I mean? Where they stand up for everybody. Yeah. You know what I mean? But it's like with the, couple dozen people walking into a room and everyone just like, oh, and I was like, oh, that's like really special feeling is what I'm saying.
Yeah. So how much longer do you have before you can hit the streets?
Do you know? I mean, it's just, we're butting up against the holidays. So it's who wants to train 4 people?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we can't use a taser yet until we get tased, which is crazy.
It's fun.
Yeah, I wouldn't say...
It's good life experience.
Yeah, I could probably do without that. But that's it. We still have, one little driving thing left. and then a body cam thing, and then there's all the technical stuff like using the computer and
administrative stuff.
Administrative stuff. So it might be a while. I'm guessing like January.
Okay.
Sometime in January. So
well, make sure you let me know.
Why?
I want to be there. I'm going to find out what car you're in. I'm going to follow you around.
I'll be with an FTO though.
Yeah, it's fine. I just want to get it on video. Like, here's little Johnny.
But yeah, it'll be sometime. It's exciting to.
I'll send it to Bowen and all them and show them. Like, look, he's putting cuffs on somebody.
Wait, I'm doing it wrong. Hold on. Yeah, we're going to do it again for the video. I'm going to take it off and then we're going to do it again. That's probably the hardest first decision to make as an officer. It was for me anyway. Mm-hmm. It was like, I know I've got enough to arrest them. It's just applying it. Like, you're like, okay. You mean physically just
like just hot, like engage, like you're talking to them, like,
yeah,
where do I stand? How do I, sir, turn around, turn away from the sun. You're never going to do that. That's not going to happen. Yeah. You're going to be having a casual conversation. Hey dude, come here. You're under arrest. Like it's weird. It's a weird thing.
The trick, and I had a female officer, actually a very high ranking female officer, talking about the importance of communication in my class, and she was like, hey, out of the 20 something years that I've been, I've only been in like 2 physical altercations because I was able to diffuse any situation that I was in. I had a guy, who's a huge dude, and she's like real, petite, and he's like, yeah, he turned around and put it. The only time was 2 drunk ladies were fighting her, but
yeah. You ain't gonna reason with that.
Yeah, usually, but she's like, 99.9% of the time. I mean, it's your mouth that gets you in or out of trouble.
Again, 0 to 5 years.
Yeah.
You're learning. Even if you are good at talking to people, you're still learning because there's things you're not talking to the same. You're not talking to your friends. So just that clientele, I don't know what else to call them, that you're dealing, that 3% of the population that you're dealing with, and you usually repeat offenders, they don't talk the same way you and I talk to each other.
Right.
So you've got to learn a whole new way to talk to people. And now we haven't even gotten into the cultural differences. I'm just talking about people that commit crimes in general. Yeah. And now you got, where we're at, Hispanic, Black, I haven't really seen any Asian community. There's a big Middle Eastern, there's a big African community, like from Kenya, I think it is. Right. So there's all these, just totally different cultures, and you got to learn to talk to each one. Like it's different. So like me, I've always been a talker, always been good at talking to people, but there's a learning curve.
Yeah. I think the trick is just to be as respectful as you can. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Just have conversations. Don't come across like a robot.
Yeah. And don't talk down to them. And, at the end of the day, you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah. I was always upfront with people. Like when I was learning, hey, I'm new. I'm learning. I'm not going to sit here and pretend I'm been in the force for 40 years. And right away I would get respect. Like, oh, okay. So you learning. I'm like, I'm like, how am I doing so far? Then they start to laugh. So, even when it was a crazy, I remember it was crazy. I just ran this dude down, and now I got to get all the information.
Yeah.
I didn't know what to do. Like I was kind of worked up, but I remember saying, dude, bear with me. There's going to be a lot of information. I'll probably ask you the same questions over and over. I was like, I'm new. I'm trying to learn this. He's like, dang, I got run down by a rookie. I was like, yeah. I was like, I'm fast, but I'm stupid. And he's like, so I got him laughing.
Think what part of it is, just overcoming that, hey, I'm a macho, invincible cop thing. And just, you're human too. And this is your profession.
Yep. It's hard for cops to not have an answer.
Yeah.
That's what I've seen in my time. It's just hard for them not to have an answer. I've been lucky with the people I've worked around. I've seen it, but not nearly as much as I've seen it other places. So, that's pretty cool, but I'm excited for you, man.
One of the exciting things too is that, the department that I'm going to be going to is starting to shift their philosophy and using, hey, you know what, if we're going to get these reserves, and one of them is like literally a rocket scientist who works at like a aerospace company. Let's take some of that talent.
Let's utilize it
in certain things. So that's kind of one of the exciting things you know, that I'm working with, you know, the department, our department is like, hey, there's a huge issue with gun violence right now. Let's put our heads together and try to come up with something, you know. So I'll be part of it is just, you know, special projects and stuff like that. Again, it's just, hey, if we have this, you know, I'm just making this, if we have this chemist or whatever, do stuff and stick that person over where we need that person, or that level of expertise.
I remember we picked up a girl. She had in the civilian side, she had a lot of experience with human trafficking.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yes, and I think she wasn't in the streets that long.
Yeah, they plucked her out.
Yeah, pulled her, and maybe I was in the minority, but I was like, that's smart. Like, you know,
you got other guys who are like, she didn't put in her time, but I'm like, hey,
she's not doing that type of work. You know what I mean?
Skill set.
Yeah,
and you have it in house. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. You're not doing now. The part that I would have a problem with is if like that was like a stepping stone to start going to these other spots that you never would have got to without taking the path. But doing like that's a specialty that unless you're in that world, I have no idea how to deal with human trafficking. I've been a cop 17 years. Right. I don't know how to deal with it.
So somebody identified talent of a certain skill set.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, this guy has a really great background. And, you know, for you, it might be in like a jiu-jitsu. And, hey, we could use you in the training, in a training academy. We could use you for this.
Yeah.
You know
and they did. I mean, before they took me as an academy staff member, like they all the time, hey, can you come help out? Yeah,
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, cool.
Pretty soon you're like, you know, that's the thing. Why outsource things when you have a lot of, you know, like a large department? You have a lot of in-house expertise. I mean, utilize some of that stuff.
Yep. So what else is coming down the pipe? I know you got your books out. You got you're a doctor. You're a cop.
Yeah.
Your dad.
I am. You know, I have an administrative role too at TCU, which is a associate dean of graduate studies. So trying to expand our graduate program and. You know, we have this leadership thing that's coming down the pipeline. Hopefully we make that work.
Yeah.
We have a leadership program for non-ranking officers. You know, we don't have one for, and we're a small department. We only have like so many faculty members that can teach the stuff on policing and run the stuff on police. So there's only like a few of us.
So I'm a little hurt because they came up with this leadership program right after I graduated. And of course I would have wanted to do that. Especially when I think I had like 2 payments of my GI Bill left. So it would have covered whatever the cost was. And I wasn't allowed to partake because they were only taking like sergeants and above or bastards. so I am still
up with a junior version of that. We call it internally lead junior, or at least I do.
So I'm not even going to get the real certificate. It's going to be the junior certificate. It's like getting the little junior badges.
You get the sticker of it.
That's basically what I'm getting.
Which is what I started putting on at the academy. I'm like, look, they give me the sticker and I just stick it on.
I got an homage to y'all, and I can't even get the leadership class.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. See?
Yeah.
I mean,
is that LT LaDainian Tomlinson signed that?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's awesome.
I drove him around. I was his little escort boy.
What a suck up.
No, nobody wanted it.
Nobody wanted it.
There was 4 of us standing around. Who wants to drive around an LT? I was like,
what?
Like LaDainian Tomlinson? Is that who you're talking about? And they're like, yeah. I was like, he played. I didn't know he played at TCU.
Yeah.
I didn't even know about TCU till I moved here. So, so they're looking around and nobody raised their hand. I was like, I'll do it.
And he was in the NFL at the time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Or did he retire already?
I think he had just retired.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But still, that's like Hall of Famer.
Yeah. No, it was cool. And that dude, if somebody hollered at him, he'd stop, get a picture, sign an autograph.
Oh,
everywhere. Awesome. So, I mean, I don't know that I ever got that golf cart over 2 miles an hour because he would just stop. I mean, nobody was turned down.
Wow.
Nobody. So once we were driving down by the bookstore or the coffee shop, whatever you call it, Frog Alley, and he's like, hold on, stop here. So he runs inside the store. He goes in and comes back out with a bunch of stuff
that he bought.
And or they just gave him. Yeah. I don't know how that works.
Probably just gave it to him.
And So he's setting it all down, and he throws me a box with that football in it,
And he signed it.
And I'm sitting on the. I'm just sitting, in the driver's seat, and he sits down. I hand it back to him, and he signs it, and he hands it back to me. And I'm like, where do you want me to put it? He's like, I don't care where you put it. That one's for you. And I goes, oh, sweet.
Oh, man, you got hooked up.
I was like, well, you didn't play for the Lions, though. And he started laughing.
Hey, man, he wants to. Actually, he never won a Super Bowl in San Diego, I don't think.
I don't think so either.
Yeah. So it'd been the same thing. But he has the dignity of not playing for the Lions.
That's true. That is true. I mean, we are 0-10 now.
Yeah.
0-10-1. Hey, we tied somebody.
There's nothing's for sure in life except the Lions and probably the Browns.
Right?
Being, the two stinky Midwest teams.
I know. It sucks. 30. I'm 38, and I've never seen us even a challenge in the Super Bowl. Or a challenge in the playoffs.
Yeah, not even close.
We've made it to the first round, and that's about as far as I can ever remember us going. So I say us. I don't even know why I associate myself with the Lions.
Yeah, I thought things were going to turn around. They built the stadium a while back, Ford Field.
And we did do well. I mean,
and I was like, oh, that's a turning point. All right, they're investing in a quarterback.
Yep. And then what do? We do with everybody. At least Stafford somehow escaped the retirement card. We keep a great player and then we force him to retire early. Yeah. He got out and he went to the Rams and now he's kicking ass.
Yeah.
And I'm happy for him.
Yeah.
And this poor guy that we got now is probably just his life force probably been sucked out of him.
He's done.
I did so well, and because he was a good quarterback as far as I remember.
Yeah, that's where good quarterbacks go to end their career.
Wow, it sucks.
Because they get early drafts, and then they go for the quarterback, and then they pick a really good quarterback. But I don't know what it is.
TCU's not playing too hot right now either.
No, but we got that new SMU coach.
Yeah, how is that going? Does everybody seem to
mixed?
I wouldn't want to be. I wouldn't want to be him. I'd want to be the next coach.
Why?
Because you just filled shoes as somebody that most people adore.
Yeah, they do adore him. They do adore Patterson, but he had been, and it's weird because he had been on a for the last 4 or 5 years, not a huge winning record,
right? And but that's his reputation.
I know. It's like, man, he built that stadium. There's a statue. It's the house that Gary built. Yep. But, this guy that's coming in, I mean, I was looking at his thing and he turned around a pretty crappy program, SMU. We used to just mop the floor with them. And now we lose to them. Yeah. So if you can't beat them, join them or get them. Yeah. So it's a mixed reaction. Part of it is probably the loyalty to Patterson and how he got done dirty or what. I don't know how it went down.
It's like Michigan back in their day when they had Carr, and then the next people that came in after him was like the very next person. Everybody's just like, you ain't gonna be the same dude.
And I think he knows that, but it was just one of those. Part of it is still that loyalty. The other part is SMU. I don't know. It's an improving program, but it's still not like, hey, you didn't nab somebody from, like a perennial bowl, coach. Yeah. Well, before I end this, one of the things I want, because I'm going to have you on again now that you finally got on here, but I definitely want to have you in again. But what, in your policing, are there research things that you're trying to keep an eye on? Is there trends, research trends and stuff like that?
Because I think it'd be smart to do. You have different things to navigate now because you work for somebody while you're doing it, so you may have to talk to HR on that, or the chief.
Yeah, I mean, there are certain projects that I would love to kind of dip my toe in. I've always wanted to write a book on, for example, LGBTQ officers. And that would be a book, and just really their experiences going through the different decades. Some are retired now. I want to see again. Policing is such a hyper masculine environment. Yeah. And there's jokes and stuff, but there is real. There's gay officers out there. Yeah. You know what I mean? And they're I almost say the name of the department, but there's some that are very progressive that you would be surprised at how progressive they are, but they're still, that culture. So I would love to explore that more. I don't think that's been written too much about. The big thing was really getting different types of people to become police officers. I mean, that was my whole thing. Obviously the Black Lives Matter and Blue Lives Matter, that conflict should be researched more without an agenda. You know what I mean? Without taking sides. And that's incredibly hard to do.
Yep.
Because clearly at this point I've in a way taken a side.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I don't know how to kind of navigate that space.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to write a book on the experience of like African-American officers or minority officers. You know what I mean?
This is how you start bridging that division, talking about it, doing stuff like this.
Yeah.
So that, on that note, it's like people, your definition, like what you as an academic, you have an idea of what the thin blue line is to both sides.
Right.
Like, what is it to them? You've had people tell you what it is from the cop side. You've had people tell you what they think it is from the citizen side, but now you're going to experience for yourself.
Right.
And I always tell people, to me, the thin blue line is not us versus them. That's not what it means to me. To me, what it means is if you get shot in the line of duty, whether you die, you live, you get hurt in the line of duty. For life, I am going to take that responsibility to help your family, because who else will? Nobody. So that's the family. That's the blue family. I don't look at it as Johnny went to work and he stole some cash off a dope dealer and I saw it, but I'm not going to tell on him. Like, that's not like, I don't fly that way. If you do something like that, then it's on you. But to me, that's the thin blue line. It's a family in a position that nobody else has taken that call to do. So if you're not willing to do it, who's going to take care of my family when I'm gone? So it's hard because you might see it that way. And maybe me, I haven't figured that out yet because it's not something that I have really immersed myself in. But if somebody else sees it as something offensive or antagonistic, I'm just saying, like, we should acknowledge that. Yeah. No. You know what I mean? It's like, going back to football, it's like the Washington Redskins. It doesn't resonate with me, or it doesn't affect me because I'm not like Native American. Right. But if that term is like equivalent to the N-word to them, then I'm like, oh, like maybe they should just be called Washington Football Team or whatever for now. Right. I'm just saying it, that thin blue line, if it's a symbol that represents an anti-Black Lives Matter, which I get, I don't want to politicize the Black Lives Matter thing in terms of like what it's become, but its original intent was, hey, you know what? Like Black lives or young African Americans, whether it's real or not, whether it's there's some cases where it's like real police brutality. There's some certain cases that are like, hey, that's a media kind of hyped up fabrication of it. Yeah. Whether that's real or not, there is an underlying message there. And it goes all the way back even before Rodney King, which was like, hey, there's police brutality is a thing. Yeah. Again, you might not have seen it. Maybe some people will go their entire lives without seeing it, but to say that it doesn't exist is, I can't cross that bridge. You know what I mean? Yeah. So if those communities say, hey, that happens to us, and we came up with Black Lives Matter to draw attention to that, and then you threw up an opposition flag with the blue lives matter. And if that blue lives matter, and I get blue lives do matter, but if that means anti-Black Lives Matter, I could see where, and I talk about this with some of the Black officers that I know, and they're like, yeah, we do see it we could see it that way. So that's why I don't put it on my stuff. Right. I mean? In uniform, no. Yeah. In uniform, I don't personally, right? Because I'm trying to look as objective as I can, right? And that's important, right? But it to me, it's no different than having a cross. You know what I mean? It's a personal thing, and for me, like I said, thin blue line is not trying to be a negative thing. Right. To me, it's a positive thing, just with the people I work with. Yes, to me. But if somebody else thinks that it's negative, I'm just saying maybe there's an issue there. Right. I don't know what the solution is. You know what I mean? I get it. I get the Blue Brotherhood, but I also get like, hey, there's certain populations that
have very negative experiences with police, and they're real. You know what I mean? So,
and that's where I think the division between what you do in uniform versus what you do out of uniform, that's the difference for me. So it's, you know, if somebody's offended by me having a cross up in the back, I don't have one in the background, but if I had one up there and they were offended by that, and well, he's a police officer, he shouldn't have that. Well, I'm not on duty right now.
Yeah, and I get that.
And this is personal to me. So
it's tough because it's like, you know, it's police are absolutely supposed to be neutral, you know?
Yeah.
But when you start interjecting like politics into it and, you know, taking sides for certain things, I'm like, you know, I get maybe, you know, cops are typically conservative. I'm like, I get it. Sometimes you want to support, you know, Trump or whatever, but if you put on a MAGA hat, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's really gonna send a signal to the other, you know, to another group saying that, oh, wait, he's not neutral. I don't know what's gonna happen if I call the police.
Yeah.
So, you know, in terms of that empathy or whatever, imagine if they put on a Black Lives Matter shirt. You know what I mean? A cop puts on a patch that says Black Lives. I mean, the other side's gonna feel, yeah, I'm not okay with it. It's the same feeling,
right?
Is what I'm saying. So
yeah. I get it.
And it's not, you know, we're not supposed to take sides.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what I try to focus on. And when I don't let myself get wrapped up in the politics of things.
Exactly.
Ever. I don't like like the Kyle Rittenhouse stuff and all that, you know what, that's not in my fishbowl. I don't care.
Right.
So I'm not going to get into it, you know, but you and I offline, if we were sitting here bullshitting over some beers and you bring it up, well, okay, that's different.
Right.
But in uniform, I'm in my fishbowl. This is my world, and I do the best I can, and I have fun with it, and that's all I can worry about as a cop. And I think we go a lot farther when we don't get ate up with the stuff going on everywhere else. And then again, through communication, and it's going to be fun seeing your development now. Because I'm just curious what your opinions and stuff on things, what will change, what will stay the same.
Yeah, see, so I don't know yet. I don't know enough yet to give that any type of opinion.
I'm excited for you.
I can only give my opinion on training. That's it.
It's gonna be fun, dude.
Yeah.
And that's why I said I'm glad I got you to this point, at this point, because now it's you got to put everything together.
Yeah,
you got to put it all together. You got to take, you know, your academy training, your academic training. You know, I mean, I know they're both the same type of thing, but, and all this research and stuff that's going to be floating through your head, and, then just your own personality, and you're going to have to put that together.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't even think about that.
You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's because your personality is it's going to fluctuate, because you're going to be trying to find yourself again. It's going to be an uneasy feeling, because right now we're talking. This is you. Yeah. This is me, and we're not being fake. This is just how this is how you and I talk all the time. So nothing's changed on that. So, but when you're out there and you start doing the job, everything changes. The way your mannerisms, the way you talk to people, the way, I mean, it's all changes, and you'll come back to this. That's the good news. You'll come back to this once you get the experience. So, but when you start out, this is not going to exist out there.
Yeah.
You'll try, but it's going to be weird. I promise.
Interesting. All right. So, well, I'm looking forward to that.
All right. Well, I appreciate you coming out, man.
Yeah. Thank you, man. Anytime.
You have fun?
Yeah.
It's a good time, isn't it?
Yeah. We'll see how this works out.
It'll do good. We got all the angles and stuff. Yeah. So we'll get you on there, and we'll see. We'll come get you back on the show in like 6 months to a year.
Sounds good.
All right, brother.
Thanks.